so very much. Mm. We'll give a little bit of time for everybody to come on in. Hopefully all is well with everyone. Everybody doing all right? Ready for this show? Alrighty.
Hey,
Peace.
what's up? You streaming? Streaming right now?
Yeah,
That's what's up.
that's your streaming spot.
Uh-huh. But
Oh,
I'm not streaming this morning. I typically
oh, okay.
I typically sit right here streaming. Where you streaming on?
YouTube, TikTok,
Oh yeah,
Facebook,
I usually do
podcast.
my TikTok live right here.
Okay.
Okay, it's a popular spot.
I
What's it about?
know. I mean, activism. Some people say like religion, stuff, but more so like activism coming together with people, diaspora coming together, stuff like that.
Okay.
Yeah, through probably through. Huh?
What's
Sorry.
your what are you? What's your handle where?
Hashtag find FIND, like you're looking for something, like Kofi, my name KOFI.
Okay. On everything?
Yeah, on everything. Yeah, TikTok is around. Easy to find it. This just pop up on YouTube, even if my face and pop up. The
Okay.
hashtag should pop up.
Fine.
Yeah, that's the name of the channel.
Okay.
Change the name.
Okay, I got you.
Okay.
All right, I'm gonna follow you. I'm Dina. Dina, honey. I do manifestation. Manifestation.
Okay.
Okay,
All right.
yeah.
All right.
All right, cool, cool.
And
We're gonna stay apart.
okay. So welcome to everybody. Appreciate you. How y'all doing? Shalom, peace. So hopefully all is well with your day. We've been doing this series for a while now. So we're gonna finish up today. We actually finished up the actual all the way through Barashayat, or what the modern term that we could call Genesis. We went all the way through all that. We actually finished that. We went over overview, and then yesterday and today we're shooting this Q&A for that particular series. So we're going to get into that. We'll explain how we work in just a little bit. But thank you so much for those who are coming over from Early Rise and Bible Study Session. For those that are been with us this weekend, thank you for your prayers. For those of us that were praying for us on our travels, and hopefully you guys are doing well as also ministerial staff. We're going to remove our we moved the meeting to tonight. So what I'm gonna try to do first is maybe we can come a little early, at 6:30 p.m. Eastern time to do like prayer for us, and then we'll have prayer, and then we'll have our meeting at about 7. So I'll try to shoot you guys that information in that text stream. But today, let's go ahead and get started. May the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in the Chava's sight. He is our strength and our Redeemer, and it is in His name, which is His authority, His Shem, that we pray, praise, proclaim, project, and protect. Today's message or today's Q&A session. Aman. All right, so peace. Shalom, peace. Hope all is well with you. Hope your day is starting off well. Hola, mi nombre es Kofi. ¿Cómo está? Bonjour, je m'appelle Kofi. Ça va? Ni hao, namaste. Osayana Kitabuya, Ohio. I see you. Bonut, Oguan, Kamsa, Kamsamida, Aloha, Ciao, Ensemble, Abarigani, Aquaba, Mataasi, Itase, Jambo, Mimidi Kofi, Indifraco Katana Nueve. Boker Tov, Boker Tav, greetings once again, Grand Rising. Hello, everybody. I am Pastor Kofi, Pastor Servant to Christ, where we are always changing lives, one mind at a time, and the voiceless, and speaking the unspoken. So we appreciate you. Thank you for getting up with us. Thank you for those who are coming over from Urban Rise Bible Study Session once again. We do have it recorded, so we'll make sure that's put on Patreon and some other places for you as well. But we're thankful and grateful, and hopefully everything is starting off well for you all. Amen. We're going to get into the Q&A for Barashayat. That'll be the last thing that we deal with Barashayat. And then I'm actually going to be, even though our platforms still will have all teaching and stuff on it, but I will be off as far as live sessions and everything. I'll be off until next Monday. So if I don't see you this evening on Coffee Miss Girl 42 or on YouTube, then prayerfully I will see you later on. Or we'll catch up. We'll catch up sometime in between. But once again, thank you, family. I really, really so much appreciate you. Thank you for joining us today. We're gonna go ahead and get ready to get started to our Bible class in just a little bit. Before we do that, let's go ahead and say shalom and peace to everybody. Thank you, by the way. I've been seeing persons who are coming from Feast of Tabernacles, making sure that they've been sending donations in and all that stuff. So thank you so much. As I said, we won't be able to have the first meeting this week, but I guess next week we'll start to have our weekly meetings leading up to October 6th to the 13th down there in Georgia. Don't forget that we'll be in Texas October 1st for Day of Atonement. Before that, around September 22nd, 23rd, we'll figure out where we're going to be as far as Detroit, Illinois, or Detroit, Chicago's in between. Meet up with both, something like that. We'll try to figure that out. Forgive me, y'all. What was I trying to say? Oh, excuse me. We'll try to figure that out very soon and get that to you as well. And start sending in the text train for you guys. And also, I'm missing something. Well, it'll come to me if we need it. Oh, and men's meetup, women's meetup. We'll try to have that information as far as where we're meeting up and where that's going to be, when that's going to be. Also, in the month of September coming up, 4 Hours of Power. That means another manual, another book is coming out. So, got a lot happening at the same time. And prayerfully, you guys will be able to join us. For all of it, we thank you, we appreciate you, we honor you, and we're excited about what the Most High is doing. So let's say shalom to everybody real quick, and we'll jump in for Q&A. I think we ended on the calendar yesterday, and I think I kind of sort of, I don't have my whiteboard. I said if I have my whiteboard. I do not have a whiteboard. So, but we did go over the calendar, so if persons have questions, comments, or concerns about that, feel free to let me know. But outside of me literally just showing you the calendar, or writing it down on the board, and even with that, I don't know how much sense it would make, but outside of that, I don't know how much more I could add to it verbally. But if you guys have further questions, we can continue or try to review some of what we were talking about yesterday. But ultimately, our Barashayat series is about the book of Genesis. It's the original name. We've been doing this since February 7th, so today will be the last, as I was saying, it'll be the last day for basically that, for us going over this as a series for just Barashayat. So the Q&A, even if you have other Q&A, I'll try to get to it if I can. But just know today's prison, we're tying it all through Barashayat. We're tying it all through Genesis. So if I can't do that directly, or at least not at first, maybe I can get to it later on. But my focus and my goal is going to be what we've been speaking on since February 7th, this last 6 months and 4 days, today ending this dynamic series. So we're going to get ready to say our Bible class. Let me say shalom to everybody real quick. How you doing, Sister Knight? Praise y'all for healing. How you doing, Brother Keith, GC, Money Green, Carla, Sister Carla, Alilu, Big Dog, Donna, Hebrew Views and World News, Sister Mignon, Brother Rodney, Achut, Deborah. How you doing, big Brother Charles, double OG, triple OG. How you doing, Dina, is it? Thank you, Haitian Pride, Delroy Daly, a child of God, second Adam, the house of God, Brother Javon, stay safe out there on the roads. Faces are pretty, Bahia, Mo, Miss Vicky, Bernard, and Sydney. If I missed anybody, once again, forgive me, charge it to my head, not to my heart. I thank you all, I appreciate you all. Thank you for the likes, shares, hitting the notification tab if you subscribe. Any donations that are given as far as your time in general, talent, effort, energy, any substance, especially a lot of you guys that help us behind the scenes around the world, including even, yes, those who do give money and things to help us financially with where we're headed. So I thank you so much. We appreciate you all. We honor you. Hopefully you guys are having a great day. Hopefully the day is starting off well. So give me a second. I'm going to grab my drink. Make sure we have our wash hands for clean hands, and we're going to jump right in. Shalom, okay, how you doing? So just give me a second. I'm going to head over to the vehicle right here, get my drink, come back, and we shall be started. Salam. Okay, let's get ready. Thank you once again for your patience. Let's get started. I thank you all. Appreciate you. I want to thank you for tapping the screen. Yes, yes, yes. Do all that great stuff. How you doing? Is it Money Green, K Murph, Sister Net, DJ Mars coming on here and saying things that are racist? That the best you got? Because me eating a banana doesn't make me a gorilla. It just means I'm a man eating a banana. You, on the other hand, I guess if somebody eats food, I guess if somebody eats food, it makes them an animal. Even though you probably eat a lot of food, which is way worse for your body than bananas. What you put on there? Bananas, grapes, chicken. If anything, grapes. Right? Aren't grapes supposed to be of the vine? Don't you think that only white people eat, drink wine? Right? If anything, you should have put up some grape soda. I would have had more respect for that. You lost it. You were doing pretty well at the beginning of the joke. And then you fell off. I be telling y'all trolls, man, bring your game up. You dealing with an A game individual, so you can't have A game or you can't have F game trolls. And show up. I'm just saying, you gotta do better. You're coming for A game material today. We can't do F trolling. You gotta get higher. Okay. Anyways, thank y'all for the love. Let's go ahead and get started. We're gonna say our Bible pledge. Repeat after me, and then we'll go ahead with whatever questions you have to finish up the Barashayat series. We'll go ahead and get into it. Just repeat after me. This is my Bible. This is my sword, and this will I trust. For Yahshua is Lord. No sword of God shall ever be heard. For this is my Bible, and this is Yah's word. Hasham Yechavah. Amen. In Yechavah Hashem, his name is authority. Let it be done unto us. You may be seated to go back to what you're doing in the presence of the Most High. Today, Masha Bachin, thank you for being on with us today. Appreciate you. So, yeah, that's right, Brother Lamar. Somebody tried to come in right behind you. Still trolling. How you doing, Sister Mignon? If I didn't say shalom already. So, once again, getting into this, talking about today, we're finishing up this Barashayat series. This is our final Q&A specific to Genesis or Barashayat, which is in the beginning. So really, you could probably ask a bunch of different questions and we could relate it. But just as a reminder, we are relating everything, or looking at through the prism, or magnifying Yahweh through the prism of Barashayat, what we've been talking about from February 7th all the way till this day. So for some of you, I might say some things and you don't even know the relevance of it or where I'm coming from. You can feel free to ask questions. I'll do my best to try and make sure that I get to them properly. Hey, shalom, babe. My wife is on the Honorable Alma. As always, check her out on TikTok, YouTube, her website, and Pinterest. On TikTok, at Bloom and Flourish, Maya Ofori. On Gmail, you can email her for business wise, bloomandflourish1@gmail.com, or you can go to her website and order stuff there, or try to get in touch with her. Bloom, bloomandflourish.com, not A-N-D, the letter N, Bloom and Flourish. She's a healer, herbalist, chemist, and biologist by degree. All right, so and by the way, if you're on TikTok, please follow her new TikTok channel, help her out, share it with others. The content she puts up, uploads there and everything like that. They took down her old channel. She's trying to get the new channel up and going again so we can make sure that she's doing what she needs. How many pages does she have? The one you're looking for is the one that's up right now. It should say Bloom and Flourish, Maya Afoye. So there is a Bloom and Flourish page that is hers. That's the original. TikTok is messing with that one. So even if you can see it, she can't really do what she needs to do on there to keep it functional. Then she had, when TikTok did that initially, she does have a Bloom and Flourish too, right? But the page we're looking for you to follow is Bloom and Flourish space Maya, M-Y-A, space Ofori, O-F-O-R-I, okay? So that's the one. Bloom, it's in the chat right now. Bloom and Flourish, Maya Ofori. Follow there, and you should be able to get what you need. Praise y'all. Yeah, so the one that's on right now, you can go ahead and follow there. How you doing, Sister Tuckwa? All right, so questions, comments, and concerns. The series we've been doing for 6 months, 4 days, and ending today. Praise God. Questions, comments, and concerns. Once again, as a reminder to ministerial staff, we're going to try and do prayer this evening, and we're going to try and do our meeting all together. Since I couldn't get prayer service and everything together, I couldn't make Thursday. All right? So that's on our agenda tonight if you can make it. But questions, comments, or concerns? Anybody have any questions, comments, or concerns about Barashayat? We got through a whole lot of it. I think we got through just about every question. If I missed a question, somebody please feel free, of course, to put that up as well. Oh, actually, Elder Alma, you had a question. I had missed it yesterday. You told me what it was for yesterday. I don't know if you want that question answered. I think you were trying to get the ball rolling with questions, but if you want us to go through it, I just can't recall what the exact question was. I think it was a protocol question or a question considering protocol concerning something. I can't recall what it was. I apologize, there. We were talking about it in the car. Ah, prayerfully it comes to my mind if you want it to be answered. I'm not even sure if you necessarily wanted to be answered. How you doing, Minister Tracy? Blessing. But any questions, comments, or concerns while I'm trying to figure that question out? Any questions, comments, or concerns? How you doing, Sister Judith? I guess if not, I can just kind of start rolling through some stuff in Genesis. Anything in Genesis that you, even if it's not a question, just something that you guys would like us to discuss, or something that maybe you like a refresher, or maybe something that you've heard, even if you believe one specific thing, you've heard several things about it. Today is the day. I'm here for I want all the smoke. I want all the questions. I want the last day. I want 6 months worth of questions. Now, if you guys have questions, comments, concerns, I know this doesn't look great on recording or anything, but I'll be quiet for a little bit and just let everybody think. And first thing we see, if not, I guess I'll try to grab on to something that we were talking about yesterday. Maybe I can try and continue with the calendar piece. Oh no, no problem. You don't have to be sorry. I'm here. I'll get the ball rolling if necessary. So if there be no other questions, comments, or concerns, at least not for the moment, uh, can we touch on Abraham regaining Hebrew? Most certainly. And by the way, mic check. I'm sorry I didn't do this earlier. Mic check. Can everybody hear me on YouTube? Everybody hear me and see me on YouTube, TikTok? Yes, no, maybe so. Okay, I see another one. I see you. And how you doing, Brother Bradley? I see you, Prince. How you doing? Thank you, moderators. I didn't see what you said, GC, but we appreciate you. Yep. Okay. Khan, Taba, Aman. Okay. So, Tada. So let's go ahead and get started with this. So as far as hold on. Who came first? Abraham. Okay. So Abraham regaining Hebrew or Avda. So this is one of the reasons why David tells us that we should read, like, make sure we're in tune with the book of Jasher or Yashar, right? If you're not aware of the book of Jasher or Yashar, right, you are told to read it twice in the 66 books, which means that if you believe in the 66 books model, or module even, if you will, then then you don't really truly believe in it unless you realize that 66 books has to have at least a 67th book, right? Because you're told to read the book of Jasher. And specifically, we went over it with our men a while ago. Maybe we'll come back around to it at some point. But we believe that every man in the home and any leader of his house, any person really trying to get before the throne, should be familiar with the book of Jasher. The book of Jasher and the book of Genesis put together, right? And then, of course, if you do some deep diving with Enoch, I feel, even though it's something that is talking about the beginning and technically is written about um, before Moses even writes Genesis, as far as we're going by actual timeline. Enoch is something that's great if if you know all the stuff that goes with, because it really, we think of Genesis to Revelation, but for the most part, as far as what we have, there's other stuff out there that we just don't have access to. But as far as what we have, Enoch to Revelation is everything, right? Because if you get Enoch and then realize Enoch is written before Genesis, and then read Genesis from the perspective of Revelation, put all three together, and then mess around if you know about Daniel, it's kind of over. You got to put some Matthew on it, put some Ezekiel on it, some Zephaniah, Zechariah on it, the whole Bible for real. But certain scriptures and stuff, when you get them in your head, you realize that then you can start going through Romans better because you comprehend who Christ is and all this stuff and who he was from the beginning as being the Father and him being one, Holy Spirit coming down to the ground, right? The gold, silver, bronze, and iron being mixed together is something that we even was talked about in Enoch. Like you'll just see all these parallels, right? That being said, though, you know, going back to Barashayat and how you doing, Sister Tabitha, and going back to the question of can we touch on Abraham from the beginning? This discussion and a lot of what we learn is usually going to be jacked up if we don't at least comprehend the nation that is Abba, which we are a nation under that called Israel. The nation that is Abba is a nation that is Hebrew. So the Hebrew nation extends past Israel, but if we're talking about not just everybody that has the DNA, but everybody who's of the nation, nationality, right? Remember being different thing in the belief system of Hebrew himself, which if you are Hebrew, you're not only supposed to keep up with the language, and you shouldn't only just say, well, this is what I look like, which is true. You got to have the DNA and the blood and all that. But also, too, we forget that every nation has a religion, so to speak. I know persons will say, you know, I'm a Hebrew, it's more than the religion. I'm an Israelite, it's more than the religion. And yes, I get you, but religion, going by what we utilize here, is truth. It's just a legion of persons that repetitively do the same thing, right? So if you're part of a religion, you're literally part of a, that's more connotation, right, than denotation still. If you're part of a religion, you're part of a group of persons that do the same thing. So if you're somebody right now who's going to have coffee today, and you join me in coffee, then we have the same religion, right? It's like when persons run away from certain words. You know, oh, I don't want to be thought of somebody with traditions. You know, churches are big. Once they hear certain words, like they're like, we don't want to perform. We're not here to perform. But the Bible says that Yah's watching over His word to ensure it performs. Only persons that don't believe in law don't believe that Yah wants you to perform. Because if you're supposed to perform, it means that somebody should give a performance evaluation. No, not for me. I'm not Rastafari. Even though Rastafari believes in a lot of stuff, and obviously I am of the same, you know, bloodline, I guess, but I am not Rastafari. No. I'm in the kingdom. How you doing, Trauma Shaman? Trauma Shaman. Hey, how you doing, man? Great to see your name pop up. Praise God. Right? Right? So, we should get your coffee. We're gonna share that religion. But you get what I'm saying, right? So that's more so what religion is. Even persons that are atheists are religious. Because if they religiously study stuff to show them why they shouldn't believe in the Most High, or they religiously study stuff to show them astrology, which, by the way, astrology stuff doesn't mean you don't believe. I'm just saying, as far as what astrology actually is, as far as the logic or the study of it. Okay, you know. So, but you know, like, but you get what I'm saying, right? Like, if somebody is atheist, but at the same time they read the Bible and you read the Bible, they don't realize that reading the Bible, they think they can tell you about religion or what you do every day. But if you don't do it every day, if you don't speak it every day, then how can you speak? How can you speak to it, speak on it, teach it, tell me about it? All you can do is tell me to a person that is foreign to you, right? Like, I'm even if I can say a couple things, you know, bonjour, you know, je m'appelle Kofi, merci, ça va bien. I can say, you know, very simple things, you know, je suis fatigué, je suis dégoûté, you know, I can speak very, very small, right, amount, right? But let's say I could even speak fluently of français. It doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things if I don't know the culture and I go over to France and I do some things that are out of pocket, right? For example, if I go over to France, France known for a certain type of food and a lot of great food, to be honest with you, right? You know, you go to France and you sit down and you eat. If you were to sit up there and talk about, I need this extra seasoning, I need all this extra sauce, I need the extra ketchup and mustard, and all the stuff that you guys do in the States, then the cook would come out the back. It would be frustrated and upset, but also before he goes off on you would say, is there something wrong with what I prepared? Because culturally speaking, you ain't changing that. That's how we make it here. That's how we eat it. That's how I say we eat it. That's the culture of it. If you were to go over to Japan, there's certain places to where if you were to go and get ramen, that you better not make a sound. If you make a sound, it's disrespectful to the chef. That whole no soup for you thing and everything that they did on Seinfeld, that's actually part of certain cultural experiences when it comes to certain ramen places, not all, but certain ramen places over in Japan. And so you better not come in there doing some stuff like, oh girl, this stuff, who made this? Who made this? No, 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 no. You'll get kicked out, right? You know, there's certain things in culture. So there's certain things we pick up that we just say, like we talked about. A lot of you say firmament. You don't know that that's because of the story of what happened to Uranus. The actual word is acquired, right? But then it tells, it paints a better picture homiletically of what the word is saying. Or in other words, is allowing you to see what the Most High did, and even to the point of creation, where a lot of us are at enmity with the Most High because the serpent has done everything it can, including to change your belief on how Yah created heaven and earth. Once he changed your belief on that, you guys are talking about a whole bunch of stuff that doesn't even jive with his word. Therefore, when you speak on those things or take on those particular theories, I won't even call them conspiracies, I'll just say those particular theories, rather than coming through the proper theorem of kingdom, you get to a place where you get lost and you get lacked. Right? Or you begin to lack, which means you begin to want, and you begin to want rather than to do what's necessary. So some of us go through all these things. All right, so I know that seems like weird places to go, but I was setting up foundation for you, right? Because we're going back to, once again, right, which was Brother Lamar's question. We're going back, and let me make sure I say specifically, going back to, it's going back to Abraham, Abraham, and Avrat, or Ivrit, or Avra, right, where Jubilee 12 tells you that Abraham is given the language of all creation. So the language of all creation is crucial because the language of all creation has to be one language. Right? The language of all creation is the one language. It is the language that you would call universe. That's right, learn not the ways of the heathen. Shalom, Achia, Diana. How you doing, Sister Diana? Right? So watch this. How you doing, Brother Dwayne? Praise y'all. Right? So watch this. This is why I say it's cultural. It's a cultural prism thing. Right? We're not looking at the creation of heaven and earth the way that somebody else is. We talked a lot about that with this yesterday, right? But we're not looking at it, right? And for us, the earth is not just the center of the universe. Somebody gets that twisted. You're saying the earth is the center? Well, why is it that everything doesn't do that? Well, first of all, we don't believe when we say the earth is the center, that it's the center of a big bang. We don't believe in a bang or whatever, it wasn't originally called a big bang, but you get what I mean, right? We don't believe in the three modules and all that stuff. We don't even believe that time starts until what's called the fourth day, which, if you don't know Hebrew, they're talking about the fourth period. There was the first period where gas is created and then a gas turns into liquid. There's the second day where the liquid splits up and the top liquid results in a solid. There's a third day where a solid comes out of the liquid on the bottom and into the gas. So now you have gas, liquid, solid all together. Right, there's a fifth period. Now it's fifth period where there is a such thing as time, because the sun, moon, and stars is what we use from our place and time. And remember, we talked about this yesterday as far as relevance, right? Time time. Well, time is how you perceive time. Remember, eternity is. And when I was talking about universe means single spoken sentence. That's what I was talking about earlier. So if we're speaking about the universe, right? Universe, the single spoken sentence was created before time was created. Time is not created until after the earth and the heavens are put in place. So time is telling you where you are in eternity. We talked about this yesterday, right? So if I go to a space shuttle, let's just throw this out here real quick. Remember this teaching? If we were to go to a space shuttle right now, right? If you and I were to leave and we were to go to a space shuttle, when we head up to that space shuttle, once we get up there, from what astronauts tell us, from what scientists tell us, not from what Kofi said, not from what Google said, right? From what they will tell you out their own mouths, their time is different than your time. The only way that they can be on the same time that you are is that they have to actually not just shift as far as, okay, we're ahead, we're behind. No, they have to actually change the rate of time. Because the further away they get from the earth, the more different time is. Right? So there's a lot of stuff that we're talking about, not realizing that time is relevant. It depends on how you see or where you see time. How you doing, all well? How you doing, Sister Shima? Right? So in all this, I need you to comprehend. This means before time existed, creation existed. Is that correct? I'm saying that for a reason because I'm about to say something that's going to mess with your theology, so-called theology a little bit. I just want to make sure we're on the same page. Before time existed, creation existed, right? Something was created. That's correct. We're seeing now what is created be put together, but time existed after creation existed. Creation existed before time existed, right? Creation existed before time existed. How you go, angel of light? All right. So if we get that, then I need you to realize this. If Jubilee tells us, here we go, brother Lamar. Watch all that. Here's to wrap it up. You ready? If history tells, because I know it's all over the place. If history tells, or Yah's story, even, if the story, if the Bible tells me specifically that Yah did not make time before he created, then if there's a language of all creation, that means that language existed before time. Did you catch that? Now, somebody might not even be thinking that that's that deep, but just roll with me. If we get there, thanks for being part of the community. Say, just hear me, right? Creation happened before the sun, the moon, the stars. The earth and the heavens have already been created. They're now being molded, but they have been bara. They have been created already. Okay, so if there is a language of all creation, then the language that we speak existed before time. If we're going back to the origin, and this is when persons miss me. No offense to anybody. I'm not trying to fight. I'm just saying this is one of the reasons why I step away from this argument. Miss me with the argument that we're going through, where it's like, hey, you gotta recognize that what I say about the calendar, or you gotta recognize the way that I speak, blah blah. I'm not trying to speak dialect. I'm trying to speak origin, and in the origin of our language, it doesn't sound like modern Hebrew. It doesn't sound like Greek. It doesn't sound like Latin. Right? It doesn't. It doesn't sound like Kemetic language. There are some similarities because of stuff and speaking stuff, but overall, it's not going to sound. You have the same, um, the same thought process towards it. I'm here to tell you, it sounds different. It sounds like a nation unto itself. It sounds holy. It sounds like something that's never been broken. It sounds like something that when you get the characters, the sound helps you to make sure that you can actually homiletically piece together a word. In other words, it becomes a living word because not only can you hear it, not only can you read it, not only can you see it, but you can see it perform eternally in the same 22 characters of what we call the Aleph Bayit or the Aleph Bit. Right? So creation of earth starts before time, which means that if there's a language of all creation, then the language is one of the most important things. Why? Because the language, I know somebody don't want to hear this. Now, remember, works, faith and works, what we speak is a work. We have to have faith in order to speak what we speak. We have to have faith in what we speak. But your words that are moving, this is a work. That's why you are held together by the word. If you don't notice, Revelation chapter 20, verse 12, right? If you go read there, it tells you that John the Revelator, John the Revelator, the one who wrote Revelation, had the vision of Christ given to him, that was given to him by Elephant, right? And it's given to those who will observe and do what the Most High says, so that our assembly will not have our light extinguished, right? And because we have ears to hear what the Spirit is saying to our assemblies, right? Okay, so watch this. So Revelation chapter 20, verse 12, it says there specifically that there is a huge scroll, and John and an angel, they rise up, and he sees this huge scroll, and these huge angels are back there, and they're writing, vigorously, right? Or no, I'm sorry, not writing vigorously, basically like reading vigorously through it, looking through the word and stuff. And then there's the scroll that John says he sees off to the side of him. It's like the scroll of life, or what we call the book of life. And he says, and he didn't even say anything, he's just kind of looking. And then the other angel says, oh, you wondering what that is? You wondering what that is? Okay, well, the angels are going through the word. They're seeing if you did what the word said, and if you spoke what the word said, and if you represented what the word said, and if so, there's this book that's over here, and if you did what you were supposed to do, right, if you had faith, and your faith led you to proper works, well, then guess what? Your name is now being written in the scroll of life. You now can go into Revelation 21 and 22, where you can actually walk into the city where heaven meets earth, where it's got the 12 names of 11 of the original sons and one of the adopted grandsons who was adopted into the position of son, and you can walk in there and have authority to be able to be with Yahshua, whose face now shines so bright that it puts the sun to shame. He says this is based off a person's works. He said if you do what the Bible says, you'll get the result the Bible talks about. Right? And so John didn't understand. Now watch this. Go back. Watch this. We're talking Avra. We're talking the language of all creation. Right? The language of all creation. When you see the 12 names, what language will you see there? Now I'm trying to say this to you because once again, we don't know what nation building is. We don't know about nationality. Right? But when I walk into heaven's gates, that's the place where heaven meets earth. Right? We're talking about the physical location. Right? When you came back to Canaan, which becomes Israel later on, Israel lived there, and he lived in the spot that we now still to this day call Bethel. Bethel is where heaven met earth in his dream that he had, and he realized the children of Israel would be there. Genesis 28, Barashayat, right? Is this leading up to Abraham? Of course it is. And by the way, yeah, I like to go line upon line, precept upon precept, and we've talked about this already once again, so I'm kind of going extra on this because we've been doing this series since February 7th. It was something that you might not know about or might not get while I'm doing this stuff or whatever, like, just make sure you review. But this is stuff that we've been going over, right? All this stuff comes to a head. So when this question is asked, it's a lot deeper, right? So when we're going through this and flowing through this is the language of all creation. Once again, according to Jubilee chapter 12, this is the language of all creation. You recall? This is the language of all creation. Of how much creation? Of all creation. How you doing, Sister Michelle? If so, anything that's created by Yah, right? Anything in the earth realm created by the Most High Yah, He created it, right? At least up until that we're talking about Genesis 1, Genesis 2. If you don't want to go past that, anything that was created of Yah was created through one language. Okay? So that language you're talking about with Abraham, getting the language of his forefathers, is important because what happens is Abraham, once again, look at the bloodline, right? The bloodline from Adam, right? Adam meaning man. Man begets Seth. Seth meaning compensation. And compensation begets Enos, which is basically man having another chance now. And man having another chance begets Canaan, which is the second Cain, so a second chance for us to make sure that we are taking possession of the word, and possession begets Machalal meaning that all praises go to Elohim Almighty, right? And then Machalal begets Jared or Yarad, and Yarad, his name means descendant of this praise, descendants of this bloodline, descendants of persons trying to get this back in order the way y'all wants. And we keep on going down. You have Enoch next, and Enoch next, who is dedication, and then after that you have Lamech, who is powerful. Excuse me. And powerful begets Noah, who is rest, and rest begets Shem, who is authority or name, and authority begets Arphaxad, who we're not quite sure what was going on with him, because it seems like he has a little bit of issue accepting his calling or who he is, or maybe his father does. But at the end of the day, they have that figured out by the time we get to Arphaxad begetting Avda, or Hebrew. In Hebrew's name, Salah. Salah means to pause and think about it to the point of allowing seed to grow and become what it's supposed to be. And Salah gives birth to Avda, who is who? Hebrew. Now, Hebrew's name means what? To go beyond, to not be stuck in the territory. By the way, these are all Avda, Sham Avda, or these are all Hebrew names, Hebrew authorities. So when you're going through this, you're talking about a language, right? It's important that we catch this. This is a language being given to us. Skip on, Avda has two sons. Second son's name, Palag. Palag's name tells us about we're authorized when the earth splits to continue with the word, right? You keep on moving and keep on fast forwarding through that bloodline, and we get to Terah, who is the father of Abraham or Abraham. But unfortunately, what we don't know by the time we get to Terah, what we don't think about is not only are there multiple languages for the first time, not dialects. We're talking about for the first time there's multiple languages because at the place called the Tower of Babel, there was confusing language, right? Or confounding of language because they made this place called Babel, which means a place of where different beliefs that don't even mesh that are confusing come together. And when that happened, there was agreement on things, but Yah confounded their language because they were confusing things. They were putting chaos together. They were trying to literally put chaos together. When you try to put chaos together, Yah, these persons agreed on chaos, right? Doing things that ripping up what Yah has, ripping the fabric even of what Yah had in His timeline, what Yah has in eternity. So Yah allows this thing to be not only this. Well, I'm sorry, excuse me, I'm going ahead. Basically, Yah just confuses their language. The only language, though, well, we can't say the only, maybe, but we can say for sure, right? A language that we know was not confounded was the language of who? The language of Shem, right? You do your research and you discover that the language of Shem, right, is put into effect. This thing is there. So with Shem and them, they didn't confound, right? They didn't confound their language. If you do your research, you discover that Shem was on the opposite side of this. Shem fought against this. Shem was not with this. The Bible doesn't say that all men came together and tried to build a tower. It tells you that they were wicked and evil men. But Shem was of the men who didn't want to go ahead and go through with it, right? So Shem is a family, is an authority. So when languages, right, these families, these nations have languages, when languages were dispersed, those who came together to build the tower, their languages were confounded. But the Avda, or Hebrew language, was not. We talked about this in our series, right? So we're speaking on the Avda, or the Hebrew language, it's not confounded, which means it still exists. It's still intact. It's the language that Adam spoke to the Holy Spirit, or what your Bible says spoke to the cool of the day. When you research that word cool, it actually refers to Ruach, or spirit. So it wasn't that he spoke to her, no, he spoke to Holy Spirit, Atyan, right? Right? During this period of time, during this perfect period of peace. Right? In that period of time. Once again, remember, day doesn't mean 24 hours. So we think, oh yeah, he woke up, he spoke to the Holy Spirit. No, no, no. In that period of time, throughout the whole yam where Yah has rested, and he doesn't come out of his rest until sin happens, right? So during this whole time of Shabbat, where now he's created Adam, he's gone ahead and rested, which means when we look at that word, remember we looked up words for rest, for work. We know the rest is the Shabbat and all that, the Na'ah, the Noah, but also too, he rests from his work. When he rested from his work, that word work there means occupation. So Yah had the occupation, creator, manifester, keeper, all these different things, creator. And then he rests from that work, that occupation, creates Adam, puts Adam in that place, and says, the things that I did, right, the things that I did, this is not your concern. This is not your responsibility. I expand my kingdom by allowing you to rule in this place. That's how kingdoms work. I expand my kingdom by allowing you to rule in this place. Right? Well, even at this point, when we're talking about, it says, Lavak HaKodash moved upon, the same word is using for cool of the day, the same thing that we're getting in Genesis chapter 2, when it says, Holy Spirit moves upon the face of the water. So we're dealing with Lavak HaKodash, right? And how she's talking, but once again, to talk to her is to talk to the Father and to talk to the Son. So remember, the Son probably is not, well, not probably at this point, he is not manifested in the earth, but also we can say the Son is up with his Father. Why? Because remember, when he came down, once he comes down, he has to leave that Holy Spirit might be there. So the Son is not even on the earth, but Holy Spirit's on the earth. Right? If we had not lost access to the Holy Spirit, the touch by never even comes to the earth. Right? And now there's a whole bunch of persons who have access to the Holy Spirit, and a bunch of persons who still do not. Right? So there's going to come a time where Holy Spirit, she's talking to us, then all of a sudden, hey, we're going to be judged on where we listen to the Holy Spirit, that we look at and hear the example of the Son, who can live in our hearts as well, right? Right? Different type of living, right? But live in our hearts as well. But the Son says, I have to leave in order for the comfort to come. So Holy Spirit was gone, and so here comes the Manava'al in different forms, by the way, too. He's in the form of a tabernacle. right? Emmanuel, Elohim being with us, that can also be synonymous with the word tabernacle. He tabernacles with us. They can also be synonymous with the word temple, right? Do you not know that you are the temple can also be synonymous with do you not know that you are the tabernacle? You are, or you are the one that has Elohim inside of you, right? The kingdom of heaven being inside of you. These are sayings that once you get the cultural context and outlook and prisms, etc., you begin to see this stuff correlate better. They go through the righteous prism. So in all these things you're seeing, right, that are happening. But anyway, going back to the Tower of Babel, so Shem and his family didn't lose their language or have it confused, which means that the language. So then we have to ask the question: what happened between Palag all the way to Terah? And when you do some research, you'll discover. Matter of fact, it don't even take too much for you to at least agree with the end of what I'm about to say. But if you do your research, you'll discover and you'll look and you'll find and you'll go, you know what? Wait a minute. You'll go, wait a minute. Time out. It says clearly, right? Now, if you read Jasher, you get this right away. But it tells us clearly that Terah was not doing what he was supposed to do. And Abraham leaves his father. He's told once Terah dies, leave your father's house, leave your father's wealth, leave connectivity. In other words, what he's saying, because we don't get nation building, he's actually telling Abraham, leave your father's nation. Because every family is a nation. Every nation is a family. We're not used to seeing that because we're used to places to where now they're trying to trick you and I, even though they'll tell you, depending on who you talk to, you know, depending on how persons identify, but they'll tell you the United States of America is what, 60, 70, some persons say up to 80% so-called white persons, right? That's what they'll tell you, even though then they'll break it down and say, well, there's really a lot of Latino, Spanish, and all this, but we don't know how to qualify and quantify, and they don't even identify. Some black folk don't even identify as black, etc., so-called black folk or African American, whatever. But I'm here to tell you, you don't know how nationality works because you're used to something like that. Maybe you're in a big city and you just see so much, and you say, "Oh yeah, the world is diverse like this." So you live in right, but you might not recognize that if you go to Ireland, no shade on Ireland. I'm not saying that there's zero black persons there, but they're gonna look very similar. You know why? Because they're a family, right? If you go to Greece, there's persons of different cultures and communities there for sure. But if you go to Greece, a lot of persons gonna look very similar. You know why? Because they're the same family. I'm just trying to tell you how stuff works. I'm not saying you can't have anybody of any stuff there. I'm just telling you how family works, right? If you go over to Lagos, right, cats are gonna look, even though they're gonna look different as far as if you want to give them a face, but certain features are gonna look strong and look very similar. Why? Because they're all in the same corporation of Nigeria, right? So, and all these other things. What was his nation? His father's nation. They were Syrian, according to the word. They were Syrian. Abraham sends his servant back to Syria because his family's Syrian. Laban and them are Syrian as well. So when Israel married, they sent Israel back to Syria to Padan Aram to get somebody Aramaic or Aramaic, right? And this is actual Syrians, actual Aramaic persons, right? So when they say Aramaic, they're not telling you that really the Aramaic person is talking about, yeah, Abraham and Sarah, they broke away from being Syrian, right? They went back to a place that, was Aramaic, that had Aramaic persons there, but ultimately that would become Israel. And everybody else would either be displaced or, to be honest, they would be offed, right? But they would, most of them be displaced, or they would be grafted in, they would become us. And if they became us, then they're no longer Canaanite, Syrian, whatever. But when lawfully speaking, when Abraham left Syria or left Terah, his father, because his father was an idol worshiper, when he left the country of Terah, right? But here's the deal: Terah, his father, had actually left the country of the kingdom, right? He had left the nation that was Hebrew. He had left the nation that was Palag. He had left the nation that was Enoch because he had decided to be with heathen spirits. A lot of persons don't know that, right? He had decided to be with heathen spirits, do idol worship. He was under Nimrod. Abraham's father was under Nimrod, right? So Abraham's father, right, is not trying to do righteousness. So he had left already. He was no longer not once again no such thing as an Israelite yet, right? But he's not in the nation. If you're doing idol worship, does Yah say you're in his nation? This is why I try to tell everybody, right? This is why I try to tell persons once again. Everybody says all this stuff. This is why I try to tell persons: be careful all this stuff that you're talking about, right? Be careful about all the stuff you're talking about. Like if you're not following, if you're in the idol worship, if you're sitting up there still talking about, yeah, I follow the Most High, but we're gonna see how much Halloween candy you buying and how much you're giving out, right? We're gonna see how much Thanksgiving you're gonna do. We're gonna see how much Christmas you're gonna do, right? Like you can't be so Abraham. So once because once you do that, that's idol worship. As a matter of fact, remember when you go over Leviticus chapter 23, we went over it last year. We went over Leviticus quite a bit, right? But when you go over Leviticus chapter 23, you must recognize that it even tells us that for a few of the holy days, if you do any of these holy days, you hear what I'm saying? It tells us that if you do any of these holy days, that you will actually be, or sorry, if you dismiss or ignore the holy days, it says you will be utterly cut off. Yeah, the church does do quite a bit of those pagan holidays, right? And even with try to change, oh no, this isn't Halloween, this is Harvest Day. Harvest Day is still connected to Halloween or Halloween, right? And our Harvest Day biblically is not the same as the world. You have to come out of the world. If you're still doing what the world does, you got to realize you're part of the nation. And ultimately, there's only really two nations that you should be concerned with. There's a nation of righteousness and a nation of ashalah, or evil, or iniquity. And you must get out of that nation of iniquity because you're so shaped by it that you don't realize that you're misshapen. You think that when somebody molding you back into in the mold, right? You broke the mold. You were so busy trying to break the mold, not realizing that the first mold that you were given was of Yah. Now you got to break the mold of lasciviousness to be able to get back into the mold of virtuosity. What is that? You said, what's crazy to me, sometimes the Sabbath doesn't fall on Saturday, confuses you. Yeah, we talked about that yesterday. Maybe we'll get back into that again today, right? But ultimately, as far as the language of if I can just real quick finish this, the language of Avda or the original Hebrew. Why is it important? It's the language of all creation. Now, this is where we get to with Abraham, and this is where we get to when we say, hey, Genesis and Joshua, they go together. Many persons don't know that the Bible literally says that if you're going to be in the inner court of the king, you should learn the book of Joshua. Matter of fact, that's your requirement of David. If you're going to be brought into the court, you need to make sure that you know the book of Joshua. That's how important the book of Joshua is. When you put the book of Joshua with Genesis, it fills in a lot of blanks for you. But long story short, you will discover that Abraham decided that he would break away from idol worship by literally breaking idols in his father's house. His father would even call the popo on him, so to speak. Would try to go to Nimrod and say, "Hey, you need to go ahead and deal with Abraham, right?" But he would basically break away from his father while his father still yet lived. And once his father passed away, he was given instruction to go ahead and leave all the way out. He left all the way out of his father's land, and he was able to get to a position, to get to a place to where he was separate. That land that he went to, that was promised to him to be separate from his father's. So that's why he said, "I will make out of you a mighty nation." Your father has cut himself off from my ways. You, even after his death, break that generational curse. Leave, get a fresh stake on stuff. Anything that leaves with you, anybody that leaves with you, I will clean them. I will make them lawful. I will make them legal. But leave and stand on my word. Stand on my zadah. Stand on my seed. Stand on my law. Right? A law that doesn't give rights, but it protects rights. Right? Inside of here, everything that I speak is a right to those who are righteous. Right? So he tells them to leave and to separate. When Abraham does this now, according to the book of Jubilee, bring this part in. When Abraham leaves, it's all right that he decides to break away rather from his father's stuff. It says when he broke away, when he made his decision, that the father kind of downloaded right away into his head, downloaded into him the language of all creation. Or it'll say there nowadays, in modern days, it will say he gave him Ivlit, which is a way of saying Avla Hebrew, the original Hebrew. Says he gave him Ivlit, and he took this Ivlit or Avla, he took this Hebrew, and he had it downloaded into himself. That was the language of his fathers, but he was given the language not just only to be able to speak it, but also to be able to read it, because it said then he also had revealed to him where the scrolls of his fathers were. So not of Tanakh, but his fathers that go back into righteousness, which means that there's a lot of scrolls that we don't even have access to, or might and don't even know it. We got to do some research. But there's scrolls that the Bible is telling you go back even before. So not just Enoch was written before Genesis, but apparently there's a bunch of scrolls that are written before Genesis, right? Problem is that they're either locked away somewhere or it's not time for them to be revealed. They will be revealed on the other side. But we have evidence of this, and it says all those scrolls, in order to read them, you're going to have to learn Alpha, you're going to have to learn Hebrew, you're going to have to go back to your original. It's important, therefore, the Bible is telling us, it's important that the language of all creation stays the same, to the point to where Yahashua HaMashiach says in the Sermon on the Mount. Remember in verse 17, he says, I do not think I came to destroy the law or the prophets. I came not to destroy, but I came to fulfill. Where we keep on going, the next verse 18, it says, until heaven and earth have passed away, should not one jot or tittle in any wise pass. If we actually put that in the original language and try to do our best to translate and give you what it's saying, it's more so saying this. In verse 18, it's saying, until this heaven and earth pass away, as Isaiah 65 says, and until the new heaven and earth meet, right where heaven and earth can meet, just like it did in Genesis chapter 28, it says, until then, the law that's given does not change. And it should not change the way it is written, or even change as far as the numerology, because every character that we use has a number attached. The very next verse after that, verse 19 says, anyone who teaches persons how to live without this, and tell them that they are better for living without this, and they themselves don't live it, they are considered to be the worst by the standard of the kingdom of heaven. But those who teach others how to live by this particular law, and teach them what it is to keep this particular law, right? Not change one jot or tittle, and they themselves keep it, they are considered to be greater concerning the measurement, the rule that we use, and the ruler of the kingdom of heaven, right? And then the last verse, verse 20, that we usually use in this 4-verse setup, last verse in verse 20, it says, you should know the law greater than the scribes and the Pharisees. The problem is that you're going to go before pastor so-and-so, apostle so-and-so, overseer so-and-so, presiding prelate so-and-so. You're going to go in front of them. And when you go in front of them, you're going to find out really quickly. Just keep it in the butt. When you go in front of them, what you're going to find out very quickly is that they're not actually keeping the word and making sure it doesn't change. Right? That's why I say you got to be careful. When you do the church hopping thing, or if you're coming over here, I want you to recognize, I told persons this when we even dealt with the stuff earlier this year. How you doing into the deep? I told persons this when we even started in cultural prospects, excuse me. I told persons when we had even a little bit of conflict or whatever, hey, as long as somebody is preaching the word, right? Like if you mad at me, if you think I did whatever, blah, blah, cool. Preach the word. Y'all heard me say that. That was specific because that's the truth. I'm not here to stop anybody. The Bible says, let there be no Paul or Barnabas. Now, if you start preaching against the word, though, right? Like, for example, if you said that, hey, this is the doctrine, I believe, blah, blah. I'm not even accusing anybody. I'm just giving an example. If somebody were to be like, this is the doctrine, and I believe, blah, blah, I'm all the way there. Okay, cool. That's the doctrine. It's greater than myself, right? Yeah, cool. Now, if somebody were to get mad, right, and then you get mad at your leader, you get mad at your husband, you get mad at your wife, whatever, you get mad at your mama, and now you want to go somewhere different and say, oh yeah, the stuff that they taught me is not real. Well, if you're only doing that because you're upset, well, now we got a problem. But if you leave because you believe they did righteous things, but you still teach and preach righteousness, then that's what it's about. So the problem that we have is that there's a lot of persons who are supposed to be Israel. The problem that we have is we have a lot of persons that are supposed to be Israel. A lot of persons who say that they're IUIC, right? Right? That they're saying all these things. And, even I have persons, it's weird. Like I had somebody the other day, why do you still say Christ? Why do y'all still say servant of Christ? Somebody said that to me a couple days ago. I was like, well, brother, you IUIC. You know what I'm saying? Like it was that problem, but we're fighting each other over this weird and wild stuff. It's very weird behavior. But if we're going to talk about fine, we want to get into the language of all creation, then fine, let's keep it all the way. But if we're still not going to be obedient to going back to the origin of it, we're still doing what we want. And once again, praise God, we're learning. Praise God, we're closer. Praise God, even if they're using stuff that's Greco-Roman in context that didn't exist until certain things as far as the law first mentioned and all that, I'm thankful that all of us are getting into the names and getting into truth and trying to come out of the Jesus and Jesus and Jesus and all that stuff for sure. Right? And if you didn't get what I meant earlier, IUIC literally is Israelites unified, right? Israelites unified in Christ, or Israelite unity in Christ, or something like that, right? Christ itself is not a bad word for the person, the guy. I don't even know if he's on again today, but if he ever sees this, right? Christ itself just means, um, anointed, or even if you say it correctly in the original language, it turns into the anointed one, right? So you have to say it correctly. But we follow the word. Ultimately, is what I'm saying. But we fight over some of the things. It's like, okay, is it word? Is it true? Does it bring us back to original intent? So the language of all creation, and then even the connotation, the denotation. How should we teach it? What are the same words? Right? I'm not even talking about names right now. I'm talking about, hey, are we at least all recognizing we should not be saying firmament? Are we at least all recognizing that tree doesn't mean, tree in the Hebrew, whether it's modern or not? Are we able to even tell the difference between modern Hebrew and what it means and Hebrew stuff now? Because when we're using some of this stuff or some of this language or something that somebody else is telling you that's what they were doing with it, we're telling you that what we have is different or whatever, not realizing that when you're utilizing that stuff, they don't believe what you believe. It's like different. You know how I'm not gonna say different versions of writing are always necessarily like this, but I don't think persons get it. It's like having a different version of the Bible. They're all versions. So if you don't know the original, you don't have a problem. But you might argue, no. I like the NIV because the NIV is okay, but the NIV also is the Alexandrian Bible. So the reason why it's missing some verses is because they don't believe in the Father and the Son being one. Some of them don't even believe that Christ was actually on earth. Right? So if you read the NIV, just keep that in mind. It doesn't mean you can't read it. If you're going to read one of those Bibles, the Gideon Bibles, the red ones, sometimes green ones you find at the hotel, just know that those persons are KKK. They're family who made that. So if you're going to read one of those Bibles, you just have to keep in mind you're going to see a couple of words in there that they're slipped in there. You have to know better. Right? I'm glitching. I apologize for glitching. I don't know if I can change that today. I apologize. Right? What's SOC? SOC stands for Servants of Christ, coming from Ephesians chapter 6, verse 6. Right, which should be read in context as far as Ephesians the whole book, but especially Ephesians chapter 6, verse 6. Okay, I apologize. I don't know. I can't really do anything today about the glitching. I sincerely apologize. Hopefully you guys can come over if it's that bad. Right? But I say all that to say the language of all creation. Right? I say all that to say the language of all creation is crucial. The language of all creation is extremely crucial to this conversation. If we don't know what a word was, it is originality, what it means, what the characters of the word, just like Barashayat, somebody said, go over Barashayat again. Right, I believe it was Brother Brandon. When I go through Barashayat, most persons would try to have conversations, arguments, and sometimes I just get to a place where I tell them outright, if you can't tell me what Barashayat means, we're not having the same conversation. It's the first word of the Bible. It's also, or what we call, remember, because Enoch and other scrolls we just shown have been written prior. But that being said, Barashayat, like, if you don't know what it means, if you don't know what in beginning means, and if you don't know the 6 characters, right, Bit, Aleph, Resh, Shin, Yao, Tam, telling us Bit, the son who comes out the right family, who's one with the Father, becomes our head, being destroyed, being led by Holy Spirit to the place where it's finished, where it's marked, or what we would call Abba Tav, or what we would call in English, the cross. Which means that we can't believe in the book of Genesis if we don't believe in the crucifixion. Right? You see? It's difficult. It's not that difficult to express your belief system when you know the character of the word. If Yahshua is the word, and the word is a person, the word was a real person, right? John 1:14, the word became flesh and dwelt amongst us. Well, then, if he became flesh and dwelt amongst us, then we believe that he's there. He's the first thing mentioned, Barashayat. The son who comes out the right family is the first character of Genesis. Guess what? Barashayat has been in it is the first character in John 1:1. So literally, when it says in beginning Elohim, I'm sorry, in beginning was the word, right? Barashayat, or so we can say like Barashayat, Zara, um, 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 Zara'at, um, At Elohim, Zara Elohim, right? In the beginning was the word. The word was with Elohim. The word was Elohim. The same, Barashayat, the same was in the beginning. the same. It's literally telling you the same word, the same scroll, the same character, the same son was present in Genesis 1:1. John 1:1 says he's present, Genesis 1:1, to the character. Or some of you would say to the letter. But if I know the character of the word, it is very difficult for somebody to get me off my square and tell me, no, 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 that's not what it meant. He was never really the son. The son's not with the father. The Aleph bit was there simply reversing to bit Aleph. The Ba and Barashayat is talking about the father-son connection and that the father seed has to come to a particular family. If we put the next character with it, Resh, which makes it basically Bar, B-A-R, Bar, but Bar, if we're talking about that, that's a word that means what? Son. So the son is revealed in the very first word. The son, the bar, has to be destroyed. Sheen in the very first word. These characters, we can see that. Yeah, there's a hand, there's something upon him pushing him. Holy Spirit. Tav, there's a place that looks like a lowercase t, but it's actually on the side. The same mark that we put in our head when we do sackcloth and ashes. The same mark that's talked about in Lamentations. The same mark that was put on Cain's forehead to protect him from anybody that might try to harm him due to the sin that happened when he killed the son of Adam. Killed the son of the father, right? The same thing is right there in the first word, where the Most High is telling you, I see what's coming. I know what's about to take place. I know what's going on here. I know what's happening. Let's make sure that we go ahead and deal with this specifically, strategically, and let's make sure that this first name of the first scroll, the authority of the scroll that I'm going to use in Moses' hand, right, that I'm going to put by Moses' kaf. Moses, Musa, Moshe, Mashas. He's going to take this name. He's going to take this power. He's going to do what he's supposed to do with it. I'm just trying to, we don't recognize that just that name. That's why language is so important. It's the language of all creation. Now, once again, remember I said, take us all the way back. Before creation exists before time, which means that there's nothing that's made without this language. So this is the language before time. This is the scrolls that existed before time because Yah said his word is eternal. We're just catching up to where he's telling us what is to write out. Right? All these books, all these scrolls, all this stuff we're just catching up to what he has been saying since before time existed. So why not be in tune with that language? Right? The language, when he made the earth, he called it Aratz. Aratz. Right? That is Aleph, Resh, Tzadik. Right? If you don't know what those mean, that's the basically they trained into this Aratz. That means that the father is the head, right? And also we're dealing with the fisherman's hook, right? Which also talks about how to fish or how to lead or how to guide or how to pull somebody out of it, right? Pull them out of the world, stuff like that. But watch this. Then you start reading stuff and you see something about Leviathan and how Yah could fish him out with his finger. Right? That's the authority that he has even over Aras, the earth. Who is the head of the earth? Well, it depends on who you're dealing with. If you're dealing with the Satan, he's the head of the world, but he's not the head of the earth. The only thing that he can do with earth, he has to do with the permission of those who follow him. You said you've been on this work for 17 years, never heard a breakdown. Praise God. How you doing, Brother Jacob? Right? This is, seriously, beloved, I want you to catch this. I want you to catch this, beloved, right? Like, that's the earth. The earth, first part of the word earth means father. Aleph, one, holy. The earth is holy. If you're not going to treat what's holy as holy, you're already at enmity with the word. Did you catch that? Right? This is why those of us that are clean are not just clean when it's time to take a shower, right? Or time to take a bath, or time to lay down with somebody. No, we're clean, right? As far as even the way that the earth is, right? There was a party, somebody pyramid came, and they tore all this up. There's still pieces there. I promise you, some of you probably even saw when we first started. I walked back there. But before we started, I had to push a whole bunch of stuff and clean up and everything. It's something in me to where, hey, I don't want y'all to be represented where all you see is dirt. Y'all saw a little while ago, I was somewhat in the area, and I was under a thing, and I couldn't shift the thing over because there was all this trash left over from all these parties that had been on the weekend, or whatever, you know. But we have it in us to represent, to be clean. Why? Because we know that cleanliness, they used to say, y'all used to say cleanliness is next to godliness and all that, right? I used to say that. But cleanliness is what brings us close to Yah. It's true. His word is clean. His word is holy. His word is pure. If it wasn't, then watch this. Anything that Yah speaks, right? This is one of the reasons why we want the language, because language also means tongue. Tongue also means nation, right? So we want the language because we want the nation. We want the language because we want the protection from the law. We want the language because we speak the same thing the Father does, but we'll get similar manifestation, if not Him to outright just give us the manifestation He wants, which is the goal, right? But we are trying to learn the language because it's the language of all creation. When Yah said, let there be light, you don't know that it's enlightenment until you get the context of it and then get the actual original language. And if that's the light he's talking about, you might want to learn the difference between that light or enlightenment and sunlight. Because they're two different things. And if you want certain things to be created, you might want to use the word in its original intent, the way that it would have been used before. Right? Somebody asked us when we were going through our Enoch series last year. They said, when we were talking about Michael and Raphael, et cetera, and somebody was like, "Hey, well, with these angels, should I take time out, or can we pray to angels?" And I was like, "Well, not necessarily praying to the angel. The angel is not the one that we're praying to, but you can't ask Yah to dispense an angel if you know if you know what their specific role is. If you know what Raphael does, then call on Raphael for what he does, right? But you still have to ask the Most High, right? So even that, we talked about a little bit about that. That was last year. We even had a little bit of discussion as far as that. One person said, "Yeah, I don't pray to angels. I definitely don't pray to persons who live on earth, right? I don't pray to them and say, well, they're the saints, and therefore the saints should be prayed to." No, that's very romanticized off of a very Greco-Roman, even Visigothic thought process, right? And even those who say, well, they did it in Kemet, yeah, because in Kemet they believed that those men and women were netchers, or what you guys still call God, right? But netchers are different, and by the way, they didn't believe that every man could be a netcher. So when you say, "What's up, God? What's up, God?" they didn't believe everybody was a God. There were servants, there were persons that deserved to die, there were persons that deserved to be slaves their whole life, there were persons that deserved to be killed. You know, like you've seen the Pharaoh would be buried, and then a whole bunch of servants and stuff are buried with him and stuff. Or you've heard about Genghis Khan, that one's legend, like extremely legendary, how he died, and then everybody who saw him die had to die, and then, or at least a lot of the persons who saw him die had to die. I think his wife died, or was off. What I'm saying, died, they were off, right? Being nice. Then everybody who had buried them had to die, and then supposedly there was even a group that saw them to make sure they did what they were supposed to, and then they died, and then eventually persons had to off themselves. But you had all these persons. Some persons say believe thousands of persons had to die just because they don't believe. When you're talking to these persons, they're coming from a concept, not realizing that they don't that there was one man who was above you who wanted to be idolized and be worshipped, or one woman that was before you wanted to be idolized and to be worshipped, and everybody else was a peon. Right? In this, everybody's supposed to be in kingdoms. Everybody's supposed to be a malachi. Every one of us is supposed to be powerful as who we're supposed to be, right? And it starts with our families. We're given family. We're given land. We're given opportunity. We're given lanes to be in. We're supposed to be parts of the body. Somebody's in charge of the fingernail. Somebody's in charge of the fingertip. Somebody's in charge of the toenail. Somebody's in charge of the tip of the toe. Somebody's in charge of the arch of the foot. Somebody's in charge of the neck. Somebody's in charge of this artery. Somebody's in charge of this right side. We all have different places, but Christ is the head, and we're all supposed to be part of the same body. We should all be speaking the same language to recognize what's there. And if we don't know the language, we don't know what was original when it was written. So yeah, so the language of all creation is extremely important, because once I recognize the language, and even if I don't speak it fluently, if I recognize the language, the more of the language I learn, the more I put it into action, the more daily activity I have. I've been telling y'all for a while, I think we're just going to go ahead and do it. I keep talking about time. I think I'm just going to start putting an announcement out, on randomly every once in a while through our Google Calendar invite, and just be like, hey, I'm going to be on Zoom today, and we're going to work on just speaking, and we'll just speak only in Ava, right? Only in Paleo Hebrew. Let's go. Let's get it. And we'll just practice for a while, practice, even though to speak different dialect. You're welcome for sure. Just realize I'm gonna be speaking, in a particular dialect, but you're welcome for sure. And then of course we'll save them, put them on SOC University so you guys can kind of do think tanks and stuff. Maybe ministerial staff. We've been working in as much as we can. We've been working in different stuff with the language and stuff too, so y'all are aware of what I'm teaching. But yeah, we have to get to a place to where the language will come into place. Remember, there's only one name, and at that name, every knee will bow. Right? I'm even praying. I don't know, for sure. I would love it. At some point, it's going to happen, whether y'all makes it happen or we do it ourselves. But at some point, I would love it, even if it's a dialect. Of us that haven't agreed. Like, I really don't mind. Like, unlike some others, if I go on other platforms, if somebody invites me, I've been talking to some Hebrew Israelite brethren in Africa recently and stuff, and trying to get some stuff moving. And talking to some persons over now who are in Pakistan again that we were working with before. Maybe we'll be able to open that door now again. But I've been speaking a lot more and being communicative, and even some brothers that are here in the States trying to get some stuff together and all that. And I'm just, gonna keep it a buck. Like, I'm not trying to say I'm the only one. Maybe this is the this Elijah moment. You feel like it, but I feel like I'm one of the only cats out here who's like, I'll just learn your dialect. We saying the same thing. Okay, I'll just learn your dialect, even if I believe that that's not original. Can we have an agreement so that we can get that doesn't have to be the thing that's stopping us from having further conversation down the road. But you're seeing a lot of persons aren't trying to even do that because it's about pride, right? Like, at the end of the day, Yah's Yah, all darkness comes to light. If I'm correct, if you're correct, we're at a place where even I'll touch and agree with you to this regard. I think that maybe I have less of it going on, but I'll admit to you that, yeah, I'm doing certain things that have to be Holy Spirit led because there's a lot of stuff that hasn't been given to us, and I have to take time out. There's some things I don't teach because, yeah, I don't even necessarily 100% know exactly what's been changed and stuff like that. Yeah, I'll keep it a buck with you for sure. That's why I admit when I'm giving an opinion, y'all know how I feel about that, so I try to very rarely give an opinion and give you just facts with context that can be used to reveal truth, right? And you can study for yourself. But at some point, there's got to be agreement. So that's also one of the things too that I think if we even get the spirit of the law of the spirit, right, and we recognize that in the law of the spirit, even coming together is part of the law. And so if we're using, even if we're speaking different language or speaking different dialect, language is not even as much a hindrance as dialect. We're making dialect as if it's somebody speaking a whole different language. That being said, though, if we can't even get on the page with that, the unity piece is going to be all jacked up. So it becomes difficult because everybody's fighting. It's the same fight. That's why I said you have to be careful. Everybody says, "Oh yeah, I'm a Hebrew Israelite now. I'm an Israelite. I'm a follower of the way." But we acting just like we were acting in the church. Because in your church, aren't there Baptists and Methodists and Episcopalians and Pentecostals and Apostolic and AME and Episcopalian and et cetera, et cetera? Is there not that? Is there not? Are there not Jehovah's Witnesses that are more split than what they want to admit? Right? Are there not? Um, are there not still Mormons? Are there not Mormons that are trying to act like they weren't racist and they weren't offing people because of that and hanging persons and they weren't saying that they were the children of Israel? And then aren't there still Mormons who are on all that, trying to have as many wives and sister wives and all this as possible? Is this not a thing? She said she tried all them churches, they didn't work, it didn't fit. I'm just saying, these things still exist, but we just brought them over to Israel. We're actually trying to bring the problem. We're bringing the stuff that we said we left for. A lot of persons still have the same mentality. A lot of persons still have the same mentality. A lot of persons have used this endeavor. A lot of persons have not changed. We gotta have conversation. We gotta tell the truth. Tell the truth, shame the devil. You said, where did I do my language studies? I did them sitting at the feet of Jewish scholars. I did them out of Shor's Concordance. I did them when I actually went to school, Zion Temple of the Apostolic Faith, Bible College, Bible College and Seminary worldwide. I went there. I actually teach at Associate University, which is a virtual university. Actually, might have a chance to get some physical stuff going soon, but still is virtual university nonetheless. University. I've studied language, period, as far as I've studied, obviously romantic language, enough Greek to get the picture of the Bible, more so the ancient version of the tongue, but enough to be able to get the gist of Septuagint, stuff like that. So, yeah. Question, by the way, when persons talk about that, because by the way, I'm the one. I'm gonna just I won't say question because I would have to make an assumption, and it's an unfair assumption on my part. So I'll just say like this. If I'm obvious, by the way, I'm educated because I know who I am too. A lot of persons who look like me, right, don't always know where we are, past grandparents, great grandparents, and that's kind of it. But I actually know I can verify who I am going back all the way back to, West Africa and the Negroes, even before, so, and some of them that weren't even in West Africa. I can go to the Kubi, I can go to the Habada, right? I can go to, and if you don't know what I mean, I can go to Europe, I can go to West Africa, right? I'm a jelly which is not necessarily a biblical term, but if you know what that means, you know how important that is to my community. And at the end of the day, I'm telling you something off of what I live consistently. And so I've sat at the feet of many. I've traveled. I've been blessed to even be homeless for a season in my life. And when I was homeless for that season, I realized and recognized how this stuff actually works, right? I realized and recognized how this stuff actually works because I didn't have to go to a church. I didn't have to go to different places. I knew enough to where I could go to the library. I'm not saying I actually started going to churches for a while before I realized it was time to come out of that too. But I was actually able to go and sit down and have conversations, do Bible studies, you know, be on my own time, develop certain things, read what a husband actually was, what a wife was, communicate with persons, take the last little bit of pennies I had here and there and travel to different places, right? Like learn prayers and their proper protocol, even learn the Jewish state of things, even if I'm not for the Ashkenazi trying to turn themselves into the persons of Shem. That being said, even certain scrolls and secrets that they had, being respectful enough that we can have conversations and maybe even be able to get access back to stuff that belong to our people. So, you know, so these are the things, that are there. But either way, just going back to Genesis, I say all that to say, usually somebody is always, not saying you particularly, but I'm saying this is just a thing. Usually persons will look for anybody but us to tell the truth about us. So while I put in the work for some of you, that's my position. So I've already put in the work for some of you that you don't have to worry about somebody else telling you about you. I can already tell you what they've said about you, and I can tell you what you've said about you, and I can tell you what the Most High said about you. How you doing, Sister Tia? That's a huge part of what we do with this teaching, is to give you something from a perspective and to report to you, us, right? Who shall believe our report? This is not everybody's report. Remember, report even being a thing talking about maritime issues, right? Or things that happen in the sea. But when you report, right, if this was an ocean or if this was a bay or whatever, if somebody were to come into port, right, the left side of the ship, right, at least back in the day, port, right, that's what's called port is the left. Everybody's port was on the left side for the ship to come in, or you have to make sure the ship was on the left side to get in port, whether you backed in, whether you came before, whatever the case might be. And you bring the ship in, and then right, and that's how they come to port. If they were in your port already and left, when they come back, they're reporting. Okay? So what we're supposed to do is realize where we are, the things that we go through, etc. But as we have now left and had a chance to be with the Father, as we had a chance to go through our Enoch experience. If you don't know about Enoch, Enoch literally became the king of the earth at one point. Persons loved Enoch. They didn't love the word so much. That's why when he passed away, they didn't even listen to his son Methuselah. But they loved Enoch so much that they followed Enoch everywhere. Right? But Enoch started getting to a point, even to the point when Enoch left and he said, don't follow me. If you follow me, you'll die. Some of them followed him and died when he was translated and when the horse came down to pick him up. Right? Now, with Enoch, right? Enoch was somebody who spent more time away and then would come back. He would spend more time away and he was getting all this knowledge. He was getting deeper. It says he studied so much and was in God's presence and was praying so much that he literally, his countenance, the way he appeared, changed. Right? So he was really in Yah's presence, and he looked at a person, saw it on him. They appreciated him. They saw what he was doing. They heard what the word was. They wanted to help him. They wanted to serve him. Right? So I'm saying all that to say, Enoch reported he would leave, and he would come back with what he had out of his relationship with Yah. A lot of us who have been in the world for so long, right? That if somebody leaves the world, and when they come back in, they're not in the world, or they might be in the world, but they're not of it. And what happens with a lot of persons, especially lacking the language of all creation, or the mindset of it, or the country aspect of it, the nationality of it, what happens is those of us that actually have left the world and come back with a report, very few persons have an ear developed to even pick up on the frequency right? That resonates with the word. So we can speak it as much as we like, right? We can try to give this to you as much as we like. We can try to wrap this up with a nice, neat little bow and everything, but there's certain persons that will never receive it because even though we're reporting, they can only go off of what they've seen, or they don't have a place in them even yearning yet to come out. Kind of like the Matrix, which, by the way, was written by an Israelite woman. A lot of persons don't know that. Right, by Hebrew Israelite woman, the follower of the way. Right, I believe her name is Sarah. I always mess her name up, so please forgive me if somebody wants to look it up. But she, the person who actually wrote the Matrix, she had to fight in court. She actually wrote Terminator 1, she actually wrote Terminator 2, and she actually wrote The Matrix. I know some of you think that somebody else wrote Terminator 1, that James Cameron did Terminator 1 and Terminator 2, and then helped out later on in the series, and you were taught that the Wachovia brothers, who are now the Wachovia sisters or whatever, something like that, they taught that they came up with the idea themselves for the Matrix. But that's why Matrix 2 and 3, a lot of persons don't like that much. And that's why Matrix 2 and 3, they seem to go a way different route. Because the Matrix 1 is supposed to we actually did a watch party on this, a couple of years ago when I fell asleep. Maybe 3 years ago now, whatever it was. But we actually did a watch party. We watched all three in succession. We watched Terminator, we watched Terminator 2, and we watched The Matrix. A lot of persons don't know those three movies or those three screenplays were written by a woman, and they were supposed to all go together. Now, I don't remember if she won for everything, but we do know that she got her money back for The Matrix for sure. A lot of persons might not know that. So if you do the research, she's actually the one who wrote The Matrix. She's a right, and if you look at it, they changed the name of Neo, whether Thomas something now, whatever. But right, and Thomas, by the way, is doubting Thomas, so they changed it to an apostle. But initially, the person who was supposed to be in there was supposed to be John Connor. John Connor, who JC, right? JC, Jesus Christ, right? So that she was playing on words. She was like John Connor. John Connor is supposed to be the one the whole time, right? He was the one who needed to be born, and before he being born, there was a serpent. There was a Terminator sent out to try and go ahead and squash him, and his father came, right, that he might be protected and be able to be born. Then he himself is born, right, and must be protected. This time, this time, the one that was trying to get him, right, or was sent on behalf of the devil, was sent on behalf of the beast, right. This time, they're able to actually use this artificial person, right? This is corporate to all this stuff. She wrote this stuff out on purpose. They're able to use this artificial person to be able to go ahead and now protect who Christ is and those who will be of him and those who will fight with him. Then what happened in part 3, which you call the Matrix, what was supposed to happen if you keep going through the same thing. Now JC, John Connor, right, is supposed to be Neo, the one, right, that we've been waiting on. Something happened to where things didn't go into place, but he keeps having this dream. Now, obviously, Christ knew who he was the whole time, but it's supposed to be kind of this path of we forgot who we are. He realizes who he actually is and who he has been the whole time, and now that that's in place, he's able to make sure that he can save us. That's why at the end of Matrix, the first movie, that's why at the end he talks to the enemy. He says, "I'll give everybody a choice. They can be free, or they can keep living in this system." Right, but he says, it basically says there's nothing you can do to stop me, but I realize that everybody should have a choice. And they tell you this in the Matrix movie. Remember, it says if they try to bring somebody out and that person doesn't choose to be brought out, they'll die anyways, right? Because they have to have a desire they have to snap out of it. And once they have an ear to hear, they can get out the frequency once they have the choice. Do you want the blue pill, Shamayam heaven? Do you want the red pill, Sha'al, hell? And if you decide you want the blue pill. Oh no, I'm sorry. Blue is right. Sorry. Blue, do you want it to be calm? Excuse me. Red, do you want to be introduced to heaven and hell? I just said that wrong. Sorry. But you want to be introduced to the truth, right? You take the red pill. You gotta deal with Alice, right? You take the blue pill. You just keep staying in the system the whole time. Excuse me, I said that wrong. But all of that was something that was designed by her. That was continued conversation, continued story. That's why the machines and all that stuff. And a lot of you guys, are thinking, but that was literally a woman who wrote something to try and get everybody to pay attention to society and how, recognizing who Christ is. Remember that, and she was a black woman. She wrote in a black Christ. That's why Will Smith is offered the position first by the Wachovia brothers, because they came to him trying to get him to comprehend, what was going on. They couldn't present it right, so he didn't take it on. But since it was going to be the Messiah, was going to be black, of course, then they were going to have Morpheus be, white savior. When they decided that he would be white, then they were like, okay, I guess we'll flip it and we'll have, for some kind of diversity, we'll make Morpheus a black guy. Right? Morpheus being a Greek word or a Greek person, who really Morpheus is being used as somebody, if you do Greek research, you're talking about God is, or sorry, God, or you're talking about a deity, all that, right? But that's a whole bunch of stuff I'm going different. Long story short, that there's this mindset that persons miss where, you know, this thing has been like holistic and us representing the truth and telling you exactly what this stuff is and having one language is something that everybody's really looking for. Us saying the same thing is something that everybody's really looking for and standing on. And if we don't recognize it, if we don't think about it, if we don't do the research, we're going to have a lot of problems and a lot of issues. I can sound like Kratos. My voice doesn't go deep enough. I can say, that's about it. How you doing, DJ? Thanks for being part of the community. I'm on. Thank you. And I'm sorry. I'm trying to get it in gear. I've been really tired today. Yeah, I've been going through a little bit. Been really tired, but I apologize. Hopefully, I'm getting the word across though. Let's finish this up though. So we might even go a little bit longer. We usually end about 11 a.m. New York time, but it is Q&A, and it is the final Q&A for what we've been talking about with Barashayat, the series of Genesis. So we got a little bit more time left. If you guys have questions, comments, and concerns, love to be able to hear from you. We're focusing specifically on Barashayat. We've been doing this since February 7th. That's the original name of the scroll called Genesis. But if you do have something you'd like to discuss, even if it's not exactly about that, just know that today I will probably try to tie it to that. If I can't, I'll probably wait on it. But feel free. Moderators, I'm not sure that I catch most of these questions. Oh, okay. Hold on. Little, who had to have one of their messages deleted. What you say? You said, man will turn against father, daughter, against mother. This is why Abraham was tasked with sacrificing Isaac to demonstrate the parent-child relationship was null and void. It wasn't null and void. If it was null and void, then he would have been killed. Because y'all's the one that told him to do it. Now, yeah, you're talking about Luke chapter 12, verses 51 to 53, right? Where he says, now this is a lawful terminology because he says, do you suppose ye a supposition, which means do you think this is what the contract or the covenant is about. He says, suppose ye that I come you suppose ye that I come that there will be peace. He said no, and he's not talking about within the world. He's saying even within us that believe, that say that we believe. Well, he said the time's coming where what? Where there's going to be 2 against 3 and 3 against 2, and mother will be against daughter, right? He said not peace, but separation, right? Not peace, but there will be some separation. There will be distrust because there are persons who are about the word and there are persons who are not. So as far as ultimately the family of Yah is going to ultimately be with those who want to follow the word. We're dealing with nationality. That being said, it's not an excuse to be like, well, as far as family structure, it don't matter anyways. That's not the truth. That's not even what was being said, right? So you have to recognize that and realize that from the jump. But yeah, that's not necessarily what was being said. But I guess I can't get behind it, but I guess I see what maybe you were thinking. Let's see, what else we have? Who is Sophia? Oh, I don't have my access to. I'm sorry, somebody asked me that the other day too. I apologize. Sophia, you're gonna have to help me because I can't. I'm having issues with getting online right now, like on MacBook wise. I got the platform stuff, but I can't type in without basically bringing one of the platforms down. So, because there's a few different ways we can go, including even witches, stuff like that. But who are we talking about as far as you talking about in the Bible? Can you give me the chapter and verse, or we're talking about Sophia because they're different things. It's almost like that question is very similar to when persons. Are we talking about the Sophia like the book? Like are we talking about the? Can you give me? I might just be having a brain for a moment. It's kind of like that nature. It's kind of like Lilith. A lot of persons will ask about Lilith. Lilith is, first of all, the only place it's actually mentioned in the Bible as it's specifically saying not to be in Lilith, and Lilith is kind of a Greco-Roman thing that actually is going back to Ishtar. So you kind of want to leave that alone. But yeah, we have these different persons that bring different things in the Bible. Yeah, can you give me chapter verse? Can you give me context? I'm sorry, I don't have my I really can't really go online right now as far as search. So somebody's gonna have to help me with that. When you're saying Sophia, you just gotta help me. I can't remember a particular. I'm not saying I know that there's a Sophia that we talk about all the time. I'm just having an issue with putting that together. Maybe we'll come to that later if somebody can find it. Because yeah, Sophia, you have to at least if somebody can at least tell me the area or tell me the context. I can't look it up right now. So I apologize. That might be one we just next time you see me, you might have to remind me, and then I can make sure we go into it. I'm just being honest. I can't recall it off the top of my head because there's persons that use Sophia. I've heard persons ask about stuff as far as Sophia. Is she represent this? Or is she represent that? But I'm just having a moment right now. I have to know where it is. So if somebody can tell me a little bit of context behind it, if not, I'm just gonna be honest. Just give me till next time you see me, hopefully, and I have something in there. Yeah, in the Bible by that name. Like what I'm saying is I can't unless I shut well unless I shut down one of the platforms. I can't look it up. Is what I'm saying. How entities overlooked it. Yeah, I'm gonna have to. Um, you know what? I'll see if maybe because I don't have access. Let me see if because we're already having signal issues a lot today. But even with the stuff, whatever, it's just one of those days. But give me a second. TikTok can disappear for a second. I'll see if I can find it. Yes, that is trying to see if I can find it. Now, also too, even with Sophia, I don't know if we have how much of that's going with Barashayat, but I'm looking right now. Hopefully, this continues to work. Okay, yeah, somebody's gonna have to show me. All right, is it spelled different? I'm spelling it Sophia. You said First Corinthians chapter 24. Oh, okay. I think I know what we're talking about, but let's go there just to make sure. First Corinthians 1. But I think we're talking about. Well, let me double check. If it goes there, okay. It's slowly going there. Okay. First First Corinthians 1:24. Oh well, you're talking about okay. So that's what we're talking about. So not the name is actually in there, but you're talking about the or somebody put in the Greek word that we're using, which by the way, could be, is a name that persons use for sure. So yeah, so Sophia is, like persons. Okay, I wasn't 100%. I thought it was actually all right. I remember this. It's taking me a minute, but I'm getting there. So Sophia is not. Remember, so like we just finished. How can I do this? We just finished BBS, right? Yeah, yeah. It's not our culture. It's a Greek. It's Greek for wisdom, and there's even a spirit of Sophia or a deity, a deus called Sophia, and that's their deus. One of their deities that deals specifically with wisdom. Okay, so Sophia, or Sophia, Sophia, depending on the dialect they were using at that time. I don't recall which one, but let's just say Sophia because that's the way we say it today. Sophia, yes, in Greek means wisdom, but Sophia is not an actual person in this context, right? That's what they're putting in the Septuagint, or that's what they're putting in the Greek version of the Bible. They're trying. So if anything, now what you do is from there you actually just look up the word wisdom in Hebrew, right? What you can do if you have like let's say you're using a concordance online, Go to where it allows you to search for the word. And when you search for that word, look up where it says wisdom, in wisdom, spirit wisdom, and all that stuff. First one that I'm finding real quick, if I were to just use those tools, I find one in Exodus 28, verse 3. And when I go to Exodus 28, verse 3, and I go to the concordance, and I just look up the word, right, the Hebrew word, right? This is the easiest way to do it if you're gonna do it. Remember, if you're even dealing in the Greek, you got to recognize they're trying to change it to something else, right? So either one of two things is happening here. I don't recall off the top of my head, but one of the two things is happening here. Remember, the whole Bible just about. I know the person don't get this, but remember, there were Hebrews that were scattered, and there were persons being grafted into their belief system, right? And so they were learning, and even if not, that wasn't always the case. They were learning the language of all creation to be able to make sure they went back to origin, law, etc. So what happened is that almost all of the letters, even though they could speak Greek, and even though they could speak variances of different types rather of romantic nations as far as puppet nations that have been allowed to keep culture, but they still had to be Roman. That fight for Rome and all that. So of course they could speak several languages, as we should be able to this day too. Right? They spoke different tongues. That being said, most of the letters, even in what we call the New Testament, are in Hebrew. But it was only over time. Remember, all even the first books or Biblios are all put together. The first Bibles are all Hebrew as well, or mostly Hebrew as well. So when they take the scrolls and actually start putting them into what we now call book form, they were all in Hebrew as well at first. Eventually, what happens is what? You're going to have um, those who are Roman, who like Greek and Latin, start writing it in Greek. Eventually, down the road, you see Latin with the Roman Catholic Church, but definitely a whole bunch of Greek. So what happens over time, historically, is that especially for those who are more schooled, right, and those who are your dukes and higher, and those, of course, really the main persons, those who are in the church, for the Eurocentric church and all that, right, what you're going to see is they're going to begin to put everything in Hebrew, and then have some Bibles that are in Greek now, and they're only using Greek, and then eventually they say, you know what, out of, for those who have study libraries, one of the big things that you'll have, that you're more educated in, will give you the Bible half in Hebrew and half in Greek. Most persons don't learn the Hebrew anyway, so it becomes something over time that you just focus on the Greek. Then you got to start putting together a whole bunch of foolishness to say, well, since we don't, as this royalty, who's the ones over y'all, who are becoming the bishops, because that's all you're dealing with. The bishops are families that have high status, and so their bishop doesn't even mean something religious as much as a bishop was over territory. Once the Roman Catholic Church gets power in Western Rome, when Rome is split into two, right? Eastern Rome is under the emperor, even though they have priests and stuff. That's why Orthodox Christianity is run a little different. And then you have Western Rome, Roman Catholic Church, which is where your Protestantism and stuff comes out of, and it runs the way that it runs. So you have the Pope, right, who eventually, who is nothing more than the emperor, right? So you have the Pope, and then underneath him are cardinals, and then underneath him are these bishops and overseers, and the bishops of territory. The cardinals are over countries, the bishops are over territories, right? So they have all this stuff that's happening. So we're having a different conversation. So the only reason why we're even looking at this term Sophia is not because it's actually, now I guess some versions of the Bible put that word there, but once again, it's out of order, or at least it's out of context, because Sophia is a way of a Greek way of just saying power, right? Now there's persons who take Sophia that was worship and therefore try to put her in there. That's when this becomes a very weird discussion, right? But Sophia is not just only a name, it's a word, right? So like when we learned Hebrew, remember, when we went through this series, we learned all these different names. So when we learned the name Onan, Onan is talking about power. Onan, I believe the first son of Judah, right? The one who, out of his wickedness and evil, just died and lost his life before the second brother, won't take on his sister the way he's supposed to. But the first brother, he dies, right? Right? But that brother, his name is Onan. If I know what Onan means, then I know that it just means power. Power is a name, but it's also a word. If I know the name Shem, in my culture, I know what that means, right? Shem means authority. Shem, it means authority. It means name. So if somebody says, what is your name? When they ask me that, I think, what is your authority? Because of my culture, because of how law works, right? If somebody asks me, if somebody comes to learn about, I said earlier, Issachar or Issachar. Somebody comes to me and they're talking about, I need something back. When I hear Issachar, I know Issachar means to recompense. to be recompensed, to get back what you're owed, right? If somebody says Judah, I know what Judah, Yehovah, Yehudi, Yehudi, etc. I know what that means. That means Yehovah be praised. So whenever I say Yehovah be praised, I say Yehovah, I say Judah, right? If somebody comes to me and I don't feel like I'm seen, I might say, hey, Reuben, Reuben, I need to be seen. See, these are names, of course, sure, but they also have meaning, right? If somebody has the name Rose or Rose, right? The word rose means a flower, but a particular flower, right? So if I hear the term rose, I know that it means flower. If somebody else is speaking and they use the term, or means a particular flower, a matter of fact, it means a particular flower. Well, le français, rose or rose is actually speaking about more pink, right? A pinkish red or more pink, right? But rouge is different than rose, or rouge, like Moulin Rouge, is different than rose. Rouge is talking about red, right? Which is red, and rose is red, but one is a darker red or a deeper red than the other. One is a whiter red than the other, right? So I know this by the context. So if I don't know the language, right, somebody who doesn't know English, and a lot of French words are in English, right? So if somebody doesn't know English or doesn't know French, well, you're gonna have a problem. And you come over and somebody says, "Oh, what's your name?" And you said Rose. They might say Rose, right? But they don't know what rose is yet. They have no recollection of what that is, right? So same thing with Sophia. Sophia is a name and is a spirit that we worship. But Sophia is a name, right? But Sophia means power. And it's coming from even the feminine side of power. If you want to even go deeper into the feminine divine, it's talking about the feminine power and femininity, right? So, but if I hear Sophia, I know what Sophia means, right? Well, I didn't, obviously I forgot today, but I'm just saying. If I know what Sophia means, I know Sophia means power. Just like, now here's another one on the flip side if you know context. Now here's one to even show how you got to be careful, because you got to know sometimes when it's important to know what a name, that it's just a name or it's just a person. Here we go with Second John. If you go to Second John is written to the elect lady. If you don't recognize what's actually going there language-wise, they're not just saying, I've elected to give you a letter. No, it's actually saying she has been elected. She's the pastor. That's why it says, give to your children. They were already having to hide their belief system where she was. So when she was preaching and teaching, she had the Bible, she had all this stuff. They would meet in the places she would meet them at. She was in charge. She would give them the word. These are her spiritual children. So when John is talking to her and says, "Hey, just like you're my child, and I gave you this, give your children this." He's talking about from spiritual father to spiritual daughter. Now, spiritual daughter, you were spiritual mother of these spiritual children. You see, so yeah, so in that context, and thank you for letting me know that word of God. I appreciate you and praise you for us being able to get these stuff together. So, um, but yeah, so this is actually speaking about something completely different. So, anyways, I'm sorry. Hold on one second. Something's going on with my Bible online. Sorry. Okay, give me a second. I gotta go back real quick. But I'm sorry. This word wisdom. That's what we're doing. Wisdom. I got it. I'm where we are. Right. This wisdom is even in different ways too, because even this term wisdom in the original intent now that we know that Sophia is not the name, even though it can be used as a name, but it's a word. And so it's just saying that there was wisdom being given here. But if we talk about this word wisdom, if we could go back to the Hebrew, right, in the original intent, you actually get to a place where you're dealing with kahakamav, kahakamav, and or even I don't know if it's kahakamav, kahakamav, I think it's kahakamav. And when you're dealing with this wisdom, kahakamav, you're dealing with skills, and it's talking about even in a time of war, right? A way of administration, all this stuff, but even in war, right? Right? So there's a shrewdness to it. Even if you look at the Strong's Concordance, you see the same thing. There's a shrewdness to it, right? So so this thing in wisdom might be wise as a serpent, be gentle as doves, wise as serpent. It's saying there's a certain shrewdness, even there's a certain sniffing in the air, but being willing to strike. Knowing when to strike, when not to strike. Knowing that sometimes wisdom says retreat so that you might be able to grow, and even when you're growing, it's going to hurt. But take the scales off you. There's a reason why in the text Chet being the ninth character talking about the snake basket or a place for wisdom, right? There's a reason why we as Israel, having these characters would have thought of a snake as being wise. One of the things that we mess around with the devil is we forget that wise persons can make stupid decisions, right? And even wise persons can become narcissistic. Wise persons can be about themselves. Wise persons can forget where they come from, right? Just because you're wise doesn't mean that you can't be Solomon and have wives that are tripping and you tripping now and you doing some unwise things. Just because you're wise doesn't mean that you're without sin, right? So when we talk about wise here, it's a little different. Sometimes you got to know how to rein that stuff in. With wisdom, with all these different gifts and all these different talents and stuff, there come different things you have to make sure you're on the other side on, or at least you know what can be the negative side of things too, because you can fall for a lot. No matter how wise, no matter how many chapters and verses you have. How you doing, Tom? Big brother. Sorry, how you doing, Thomas? Thomas Wilson in here. I'm sorry, we got a few Thomases, so I got a poor man, right? But we have to recognize this, right? Be wise. But a part of that is even realize you got to be skilled in a place to administrate even in times of war. It's a different thought process on wisdom, right? It's even wise dom, a wise dominion or wise domination, like kingdom, king's dominion, the king's domination, right? If one who is in the kingdom is wise, right, it's because he's at a wise dominion. Outside of the king's dominion, there is no wise dominion. It's a different thought process, right? So wisdom, as far as Sophia, or if we're talking about a woman, yes. So there is a conversation that we can have specifically about the fact that yes, wisdom is, that yes, wisdom in fact is this woman, right? Wisdom is in fact, this woman for a Greek culture that says that she is all this stuff or whatever. But that word there is actually just referring to the power, right? The power. So you can look at the wisdom side, which we just went over. You can also look at the word power. But we know the word power, anam, right? So the power, the wisdom, all this stuff, whatever. So this is this wisdom, right? This wisdom, this Sophia, this power, this mindset that comes in dominion. It's a different context. So yes, if we're going, if that's, I'm glad I asked. I'm glad we went through. Because there are persons that will start talking about, no, Sophia, and in the Greek, you don't understand, she's a Greek goddess and blah, blah. Yeah, the persons who were writing about power were not writing about a Greek goddess or a Greek deity. They just weren't. No offense. Just they weren't. And hello, shalom, peace. Um, so yeah, so we're not aware of that. But those things are there. Yeah, like King David did as well. I referred to King Solomon. Yep, King David, he had his issues in there too. Most assuredly. But we still got a little bit of time. We're doing Q&A, trying to be as close to the Barashayat series or in beginning of setting cultural things properly, using a very biblical, uh, Israeli-centric, Afro-centric mindset to answer these questions and tell the truth about the word and make sure that we're on track as far as what the word's actually saying. We just did, we've been doing this series since February 7th. We just finished chapter 50 on Friday. We did an overview on Saturday. We did our Q&A part 1 yesterday, and today will be the final part of this series. We're doing a Q&A to wrap things up with this series today. So feel free to let your thoughts be made known, your question be made known. Even if it's like, I don't believe in any of this stuff, blah, blah, it's cool. We're just asking that you actually ask something for the sake of trying to figure out something. Or even if you're trying to say why it's wrong, just be respectful. And we can have actual conversation about it. If not, we have moderators for a reason, and they do an excellent work. You said you really want to know Esau, why do they say he was white? How is that possible? We don't know what Esau was. And to be honest, to say Esau is white is very basic. Esau as far as the person is very, so if you look at Esau is said to be ruddy. So what a lot of persons do with this is they say Esau is ruddy because he was white because he can't have red skin. A lot of us don't recognize even the word ruddy is something that even some of what we call the blackest persons on earth are. Because you can be so ruddy or so red or have so much red clay, if you will, right? because that's part of the name Adamah, or so the name Adam means dark, rich, nutrient earth, but he came from Adamah when it comes from the dust of the ground, or some people even say Adamain or Adamai, but it came from Adamah. That means dark, rich, red, nutrient earth. So the earth was so red, right? If you get some earth, some of this earth that's red clay, it looks one way, but some of this earth is red clay. It gets so dark because it's so rich in nutrients and everything. When it's really going, it gets so dark that it looks like it's jet black almost. So ready is something we can't really tell, right? Now, if you're going into like a modern thought process of ready, you would think like it's reddish brown, and I'm not even saying it can't be. That's what we would think today, right? But you have to be careful with this because it's like, for example, the term brunette. A lot of you don't know that the brunette nowadays, if somebody were to say brunette, you think about, and I'm just using modern sayings, right? So I'm not saying this is what the stuff I came up with, right? Well, we'll talk about that in this too, but I see you, Sister Donna. But here's some stuff I want to bring before you, right? Like, for example, somebody will say, "Oh yeah, a brunette." Nowadays, you'll think a brunette is a so-called white woman with dark hair, right? Or a so-called white man with dark hair, right? That's a brunette. That's what we think. But the reality is actually brunette is brunette, right? It's a French word, and we actually know what this means because George Washington's wife was brunette, right? So it means brownish. The brun or brun or brun, à la français, is talking about the brown. They say marron or marron, but they also say brun or brun or brown. So brown, right, is talking about brown, and then the ETTE, the X, is talking about ish. So if somebody is brunettes, they're saying they're brownish. So George Washington's wife passed for black, or passed for white, excuse me, and was right the one drop rule. She passed for white very well to the point to where persons, and they repainted persons and stuff like that too. So you have a iconoclasm coming in there. But George Washington's wife was actually considered to be brunette because they knew she had so-called brown or black in her, right? So it's kind of the same thing. We have to be careful. Or here's another example of colors, right? If somebody's dressed in purple, purple is actually closer to these, right? These poles that you see, this purple is actually closer to those in the times that they're writing about purple, especially in the times we've had kings of Israel, and definitely by the times we're talking about Rome and Greece coming into place. So we're still talking about Israel and Judah and all this stuff being intact even before Christ and even through Christ. So purple was considered to be this because when they're saying purple, they're talking about a specific bug that you have to go and you have to crush. And when you crush this bug, it actually, the leftovers of the bug's crushed body, they get enough of it. It's really expensive because they have to get enough of them, crush them all, and then they take this and they make it into, the dye that you use for purple in those days. So they still do this to this day, by the way. So if you look for purple, you look so close to this, and what a lot of us think when we think purple today, right? When you think IUIC and we think our Hebrew Israelite brethren, whether they go dark or whether they go light, we think of purple being completely different. But purple back then would have been closer. Is that fuchsia-ish? I'm not great with colors, but it would have been closer to that. You see, so when we have this conversation, the person talking about all these colors and all this stuff, a lot of persons are missing it. So even when we speak on the colors and all this stuff, and we talk about it with blue around where our fringes are and all this stuff, they aren't always the same exact color. This is why even when we talk about interpretation, some of the stuff we're interpreting, we can't have proper mindset or proper thought process because we're thinking about something through a modern prism or somebody else's culture and what they say something looks like, right? So we have to be careful. We have to be careful and just going, oh yeah, the color this. That being said, so you see a lot of that happening, right? Where persons don't want to be honest about stuff, or even be honest about copper or bronze and stuff that was burnt in the furnace. So we don't know what shade, even when we're talking about red or reddish brown or all this stuff, we don't know exactly what he looked like. That being said, what happens in making him white is because we, as a people, right, have been told, and I know person don't like this, but I'm just going to be honest with you. We broke this down once again since February 7th, so some of you might take this as hateful and have no clue what I'm talking about, and still say I'm hateful. Some of you are going to think I'm automatically saying the same thing they're saying. I literally just explained why I'm not. With that being said, it is what it is. You have to just watch the stuff, or you just assume that you automatically can put me in a box. However, all that being said, um, Esau, right? We're not just talking about color only. We're talking about a nation, which means you're talking about his children. And we get so caught up on just Esau only, and then Edom, blah, blah, but we don't realize Edomites. Remember, Esau marries into Ishmael, right? Ishmael and Esau, right? They are married into Kemet. They are living in Kemet. Way before we even get to Joseph going to Kemet, and therefore Israel coming to Kemet, and therefore Israelites living in Goshen, right? We have a thing of where we're dealing with um, Hagar versus, the spirit of Hagar versus the spirit of Sarah, the spirit of Ishmael versus the spirit of Isaac, the spirit of Esau versus the spirit of Israel, right? The wrestling that goes back and forth. You guys recall that, right? Even one of Israel's sons, um, Naphtali, means wrestling, means that he's fighting all the time, means that he's always vacillating. He's trying to figure out who he is. He has a hard time, just like his father was arguing, and his father was arguing against his brothers and wrestling against his brother, which means that more than likely, too, you have to look at what was the relationship with his brothers and where did he think his place was. Some of us wrestle with that too, still to this day, same stuff. That's why we have to look at this honestly and look through generational curses and see, have we been making sure that we are honest about what might be in our DNA memory and some of the things that are causing a lot of harm and hurt. And before we go to, it's easy, so because before we go to a low hanging fruit, right? My wife and I and our son, we went picking apples and peaches, blackberries. There weren't really anything in there. And we went, what else did we pick yesterday? We picked grapes, all that, right? And got, and brought the stuff. But Elder Alma was saying she had picked, she grew up picking fruit and stuff like that when she was growing up. That was a normalcy. But she was talking about how she never really looked at low hanging fruit before, but we happened to see some, right? So there were some peaches and stuff that were left, right? I believe it was the peaches, could be the apples, but I think it was the peaches, but they were low hanging. And we were realizing, she was relaying to me, nobody's really picked the low hanging fruit. It's still here. Nobody's really dealing with the low hanging fruit. You know, and I just thought to myself, being tall, I just said, well, probably don't see it. Matter of fact, my son, Solomon, he was going underneath trees and he was looking up at them and he was taking, we were taking pictures of him. He was actually underneath, so he was seeing stuff that I can't see, and he was getting in places that we didn't necessarily want to go through and get to. But we were having a great experience with that low hanging fruit. It's something that's there. And so I would actually say on this, we probably missed some low hanging fruit. I'm gonna have to change my perspective on low hanging fruit, because we think of low hanging fruit being like here, but actually, they were allowing the stuff to grow down to the bottom of the tree. A lot of these trees, somebody comes and jacks these up. They mess with the, remember you used to climb trees like this, and you would have sometimes branches, it's not all the time, but you have a lot of branches that come down depending on the type of tree, and you can climb up the tree, but they cut off the branches so you can't climb. So a lot of stuff, even low hanging now, we don't even think about low branches and things like that much anymore, right? But low hanging fruit, I think we missed over some of this stuff is growing around it, and we want the stuff that's right at eye level, or we like to go higher, thinking that higher is always the best desire on the tree, as if all the fruit on the tree does not belong to the same tree, right? But that being said, and all these different things, um, that being said, on all these different things, there's something I want us to catch about the low hanging fruit. And on this, like right there in front of us, is that Esau and Isaac are out of the same womb. They're brothers, but they're not the same nation. Then you have to ask yourself, how can you be out of the same womb, but not be the same nation? You guys catch that? Then you have to ask yourself, how can two brothers be out of the same womb, but not be of the same nation? Well, it's because these same brothers out of the same womb, it's not the color that made y'all hate one more than the other. And by the way, it's low hanging fruit too, because a person just go, oh, white people look red. Some of them do. Well, we put them on the same basket, so we just go, all white people, they look red, they get hot, they get burnt, so we just say all of them are Esau. But we forget that actually Edom and Esau are part of African branches names, and if the same thing can be said for Israelites who how we scattered, and Hebrews how we scattered, and stuff like that, and use Israelite tongue, could it not be the same that persons who are using Israelite type tongue, right? Ishmael tongue, Kemetic tongue, being together, very similar language, going in these places, some of them literally calling themselves Edom or Esau in the title of their names, right? So that's some of it. Also, too, we know that Esau served under Israel, under some of the Canaanites that served and eventually even become part of Israel, right? Which means that if Esau becomes part of Israel, those are not Esau anymore, they're Israelites. There's levels to it, right? But we can even see from there, you keep on going, you will see some going to Europe, but you also see some going to Asia, and you see some going to Africa, right? You see some going to Sardis, right? We're talking about Libya. We're talking about even places in Morocco, stuff like that, right? So when we say Esau, we're quick to only just go so-called white persons because we only think about Deuteronomy 28, especially African Americans, so-called African Americans who don't want to see anything in themselves except for being FBA. Our way of being FBA before FBA became a thing, our way of being a spiritual FBA was to say, you know, only African Americans and only black folk, this, that, or whatever. Not realizing that some black folk that came over there Esau too. But that being said, you have to look at what are the actions and what is the mountain that Esau is on. This is why you have to know Ezekiel 35, 34, 35, 36, and then you can talk to me about Ezekiel 37. Surely, we know about Ezekiel 37, dry bones can live. But you forget that before that, Ezekiel 34, these pastors aren't teaching what they're supposed to, and they're actually eating off the sheep and tearing the sheep up and taking the lives of the sheep rather than taking care of them. That's a problem with us. And because of that, there are persons that are focused on things on Esau when we should have persons who are over us who are speaking against Esau, therefore anything against the kingdom. Then when we get that together, Ezekiel 36, we can actually start building ourselves up so that now Yah can put the prophet in a position to watch the dry bones live. So it's not as easy as black versus white. You have to be careful, right? It's not as easy as black versus white, and yes, there's other levels, and I know I've seen the pictures of which one is Esau, one is black, one could pass for white, one could pass for, and the other one is albino. Yes, there's also levels of that as well, which once again, even Noah is albino. But albino doesn't mean that you're not from the correct family. It just means that you have an issue with pigmentation or you have an issue with melanin. Right? Let's not use the pigmentation cop out. You have an issue with melanin. So Noah, who names two of his children after this, right? One's name literally is hot, meaning you can take the heat, meaning you're dark. And the other one shouldn't. You're authorized because Noah grew up. His own father didn't really want to raise Noah and really didn't raise Noah. Noah was raised by his grandfather. So if you know the story of Noah, even Noah is telling you, yes, that I can still be of a family, I can still have children, but also in that I see greatness and actually being able to identify. But just like there's a lot of so-called white persons that say they can't identify with the movement, or a whole bunch of black persons that say they can't identify with the movement, but right, or feel like they can't fit in, or feel like they're the token, or feel like whatever. Like this stuff is there. It's still part of the same spirit. It's still part of the same thing, right? So to talk about Esau, when we put it to talk about color, is very it's well, I mean, besides, yeah, we could say it's not about color or all that, but it's very uninformed. It's very easy just because it's an easy jump. Oh, okay, well, he was ruddy. That means that he had rosy cheeks. No, he was hairy. Europeans have hair. Black folk don't have hair. We used to, persons used to say that until you go around Africa. Once again, just Africa within itself. I'm not even talking about what Africa has become with everybody else who's moved there. I'm talking about just Africans that are still there. Even if we dismiss all the other persons who are trying to say that they're more African than the Africans who were originally there. If we just go off of that, that is the most diverse group. That continent is the most diverse group on the planet. Mess around and put Australia with them too, and put the Austronesian and the Melanesian and the Polynesian together, you'll discover that the diversity in that region of the world is crazy. Crazy numbers, right? So they, like I used to hear persons on the islands, and I used to hear Jamaicans, I used to hear some Dominicans, I used to hear a couple of persons talking about if you can grow hair, you're not African. That's how wow. So that like first you say you're not African, not realizing there's a whole bunch of Africans that grow here. What you talking about? Like Kemetic persons, they had locks and stuff too, but also they could have wavy hair, they could have blue eyes, green eyes, black eyes, very diverse, brown eyes. You know, you could be blue, black, green, black. You could be slippery black. You could be Ethiopian black. You could be Cushitic, Nubian, Kemetic, all black, like literally black in the meaning of your names and stuff like that. When people say what nation is black, several nations call themselves black, right? Or what we perceive to be black, or dark, ruddy, so dark that it can even be considered to be black, right? But I'm just saying, we have all this stuff, we have all this information. A lot of persons don't recognize what's there. So, but yeah, so talking about Edom, and we talked about Edom. When we go through Malachi, somebody asked us to go through Malachi chapter 1 through 4. We did it somewhat a year or 2 years ago, something like that. But we'll probably run it back sometime this year. Maybe we'll do it in the evening sessions at some point. But yeah, when we talk about even Malachi, Malachi starts off with Edom versus Israel, talking about Yah hating one and loving the other. And when you keep reading about the conversation between Israel and Edom, it's about two different nations out of the same womb. But Yah knowing that one nation would decide that it was more important for them to come against Yah's will and was wrestling against Yah's will even in the womb. Right? That's more so what we should get out of Edom and Esau, Edom or Esau, right? Esau and Israel. That's really what we should get out of it, more so than some of the other things. But we don't look at it correctly. So if you're actually looking at it correctly, you would see that. I'm sorry. Easy. They're each heads of their own families. Okay. Is it we're all if we are made in Christ's image and are all his children, then we are one blood. There should be no focus on color one way or the other. That's not that's I mean, yeah, so I think that's one of the most I'm not so let me say this. Color has nothing to do with you working at your own salvation. Right? And colorism shouldn't be used as the only tool to see who's Israel or whose kingdom in any way, even though, Christianity has been shaped off of that, if we be honest. And even in modern times, a lot of it still is, if we be honest. We don't want to have that part of dialogue. But that being said, we don't teach here at all that your color makes you better. I'm not better than somebody because I'm darker or lighter. I'm not better than somebody because I have locks or I do not. I'm not better than somebody because I'm wearing my regal robe today or I'm wearing my accelerate t-shirt and chilling out. Um, I'm not better because of those things or worse because of those things. The kingdom is a nation and Israel is important. And Paul even talks about that in Romans 11. If you have a mindset of chopping down the tree, right, or, for the expense of one branch, is saying that those graft in are graft into nothing, right? When Israel is the tree, you should forget that mindset. It tells you that in Romans chapter 11, verse 1 and 2. That being said, when we speak of color, somebody says color doesn't matter. That's not how your creator works. The reason why you say color doesn't matter is not because the Bible doesn't say color matters. The reason why you say color doesn't matter is because you come from people, or you come from a nation where you shaped in iniquity in a corporation, because the United States is not a country. Neither is London. They're both corporations, right? England is a corporation. All that stuff, that's law. 28 USC 300215 subsection A. The United States is not a country, it's a corporation. But those of you who think of this as being a country and being on the Bible Belt and all that, you grew up in a place to where race was the determining factor for many, many decades, many centuries, right? Race was the determining factor. When race can no longer be used as the only thing, right? Then all of a sudden it begins to change. But for a long, long time, race was the determining factor. It was. That wasn't what I came up with. Neither will I say it's what you came up with, right? Neither will I say it's what you came up with, right? But it's not the determining factor, correct? I just want to put that out there. It's not the determining factor, but I want to be clear. I want to be clear on something. We've got to be honest on it, right? We want to be honest about this now, right? So we're gonna be honest. You ready? Honesty. Honesty. The reason why we even would address color It's simply because the Bible tells us what the children of Israel look like. And a big part of us getting back to who we're supposed to be is supposed to be with identity, identified. And we were told that the children of Israel, most of us grew up believing they were Ashkenazi. And if you grew up believing they were Ashkenazi, or a lot of you didn't even care about the children of Israel because you were told it was about New Testament, and New Testament is about the Christian, and as long as you're Christian, that's what puts you in the kingdom of heaven, even though the Bible was written before Christianity. That being said, okay, if that's what we're doing, and we're just putting this word Christian in there, just throwing it in there and acting like it was originally written in, here's the problem, is that Christianity, for many, many years, said that if you were black, you were nothing, and even got to a place where you were just allowed to be a slave. First of all, because you were a Negro. The Negro is not the same as the so-called black person, right? The Negro is not the so-called as the same black person, right? A black person or an African person is not a Negro. A Negro was considered to be an Israelite, right? That's the truth. A lot of persons don't want to go there. That's the truth. The whole truth is nothing but the truth. Right? The truth of the matter was that a so-called black person, right? I'm just trying to hip you to the game. A so-called black person, right? A so-called what? Black person is supposed to be one and the same as or is not the same as a so-called Negro. We don't know that Negro was an actually West African way of saying a nation, and also that nation was not looked at as a so-called African or a so-called African American, but they were looked at as an Israelite. They were looked at as Yehuda or Yehudi. The Negro was considered to be an Israelite all the way up into the 1550s. They didn't stop being one. You just by the 1550s, during the Spanish Inquisition, you were no longer allowed to call yourself an Israelite, or nobody was allowed to identify you as Judah. But up until the 1550s, there was never a problem with anybody making sure that they were so-called Israel, right? And we knew this according to a little bit of your skin, right? We knew this according to your skin, right? According to your skin tone, right? That was not the only giveaway, but it was a giveaway. Your locks. It wasn't the only giveaway, but it was a giveaway that you were not the same as where you were, especially in comparison to the European. You were not of the same nation or the same people, and they considered you to be a whole different nation within yourself. You see what I'm saying? So you can see, so these are things that are there. That's the reason they're there. By the way, even when it uses this term black, somebody asks, you're dealing with Shavakahara, or, I don't know, Shavakaha probably is better, or some of them say probably Shakor or something like that. But Sheva, or even maybe even Shavachia means black. I don't know how they would say it, modern Hebrew. I don't know how they pronounce it, but and basically it literally is a word just is talking about extreme. So even when we use the term black, right, they probably wouldn't have said that they were. Well, actually, I don't know, because it means if we use this term black that they're using and we use it properly, it can mean even like dusky, like when it's dusk outside, dark. It can mean absolute, like jet black. But once again, we're talking about within Hebrew culture. But also there is a belief that at least Yehashua was black as if it was copper, but not just copper. Copper as if it was burnt in the furnace. Telling us that it's at least got to be dark. It's going through a little something. Not just the fire, the furnace, right? Furnace is a little different than just the fire. I can make a fire outside, but not a furnace. If I make a furnace, that's designed specifically to burn some stuff up, or at least cook some stuff up. You put some brass in there. You put a brass bullet. You make sure it's the casing. Yeah, but you put the brass bullet inside, or the casing on some fire. There's some YouTube videos where they show that. Look what it looks like after it's been burnt on the fire. This is talking about burnt in the furnace. So we can use this to identify who the Israelites are. And remember, part of what Israel told us in Isaiah 49 is in the last days we would have an issue with identifying ourselves. So yes, we use color to say, okay, if we're going to be honest about who the children of Israel are, even up to the 1500s, before all of a sudden it seems like we forget that all these Israelites were actually put on ships, or their children were taken from them and put in families and slave families, or then they got names like Negro or Negro, but were never allowed to actually function as who they originally were, which are the children of Israel, to the point to where they forgot who they are. Many of them became Roman Catholic, which is why Protestantism became something that was great for everybody because of their giving into Christianity. Right? This is all part of the conversation. Right? So you said you don't like using black. That's not a color. That's a Zoid. I mean, well, once again, if persons have an issue with that, that's fine. I have no problem calling myself who I am. I just won't do so on certain documents. You know, there are persons in my family who come from cultures where they call themselves black, and I have no problem with it. On paper, on documentation, I'd never be black, because at least in the West, because the West they want black to be something you're not supposed to be. That's where we kind of get that mindset where color doesn't matter. But in the West, they tell you by law, if you're a Negro, if you're black, if you're African American, blah blah, you're not a real person. You take their legalese and their so-called law, and you believe that's Yah. Yah had no problem with color. Matter of fact, if you know color, if you're out here foraging today, there's certain colors you should look for. There's certain darker greens, lighter greens. There's certain, if you're getting certain colors, there's certain berries that are designed to where they're poisonous if they're too red, but if they're still pinkish, you can go ahead and eat them up, right? You have different color and stuff like that. Sometimes certain colors tell you something's poisonous. Don't pick it up. Don't touch it. Sometimes it's telling you that it's perfectly fine to touch. Sometimes it's a color where something is protected, so it wants you to think it's poisonous, but really it's not. Like these are all things. So color is something that the Most High has, and He has a reason for it. So I'm not gonna act like if Yah created it, that there's no reason for it. That being said, all those things for somebody who quickly says, "Well, we shouldn't focus on color at all. We should." What does that have to do? We're all Yah's children. We're not all Yah's children, but it's not according to color. We're not all Yah's children because not everybody's going to follow His word. And if you don't follow His word, according to Genesis 3, there's enmity that should be put between the children of the devil and the children of Yah. Right? So it's low-hanging fruit to just straight up go, Esau is white, because it's not true. But it's just easy. It's easy. It's lazy, to be honest. I'm not trying to make fun of anybody. I'm just telling you it's lazy liturgical practice. It's lazy preaching. It's lazy scroll reading, right? Because then you got to start telling lies too. Then you got to say, see, all of those Romans, they're all Edom. That's not true. Some, but Roman is a vast word. Roman is not specific. You know, you got to talk about nation. Y'all forget, you talking about Rome, you're talking about something that was extended, you know, from the west, or from the east, all the way into a lot of the west. You know, Rome was meeting up in China, and literally Rome and Greece and China had fights. They haven't talked about. So Rome is pretty vast. Rome is reaching into parts of Africa. And a lot of these places, they're still allowing a certain degree of culture. They're still allowing for us to have a certain amount of culture that's still allowed to be had. You just have to still be a public state. You still have to be under Rome's rule. And whenever Rome said we need you to fight, whenever they ask for any kind of tax or tithe or anything like that, you have to give it to them. But Rome is a very vast thing. It's like when somebody says European. A lot of you don't know that Europa is a word that used to refer to anything that belonged to Rome. So if there was Rome that was in North Africa, guess what? That was European. So the European who's trying to still use the same luster as the Roman calls himself European. Remember, Europa is not a continent. It used to be, even when it was something looked at as European, it was looked at as Eurasia, right? But Eurasia, Europe, Asia are connected both to Africa, which means that as far as what the word continent means in its origin, a continent is a huge one landmass completely surrounded by water. If Africa is connected to Rome or Europe, right, and Asia, then it cannot be a separate continent. So we have a lot of different stuff that we're talking about in context where we're coming to a very Eurocentric prison that was designed to keep Willie Lynch mentality together, right? Not realizing that when somebody says European, you can't even talk about what we're talking about. When somebody's talking about black, you have to talk about what countries are black. And even if we're talking about color, sure, is not something that says you get into heaven or not automatically. However, we can't dismiss that one of the things that was used to keep Israel from even knowing who they are was to tell you that your color was terrible, and to tell you that you want to look up to a white Jesus, right? A white, blonde-haired, blue-eyed Jesus, and everybody doesn't want to talk about that. Right? Nobody was telling us that Christ was olive colored until this is part of the conversation we must have. Nobody was telling us that Christ was olive colored until a person started saying he's not white. Then all of a sudden he was olive colored. and he could only be the brown olive color, right? He couldn't be the black olive. You know what I'm saying? He had to be the brown olive, and we had to make him as light as possible, so it could still be put where we could have these movies to where we could still say, okay, we don't have to put blackface on the white guy, but maybe we'll brown him up for a couple scenes, and you can say clearly, see, we're in the ballpark, but he still got so-called white hair. But it's this thing of that was of a structure of persons who worship the devil, who their families were in charge, and they started teaching you back in the times of Greeks. Much of you guys are talking about England and Spain and Portugal and all the places. We must talk about them for sure. But before that stuff was happening, what are you talking about? When you go back to the times of Greece, way before Hitler, right? Way before chattel slavery, way before all these persons we're talking about now, in Greece, there were even some of them being dark skinned families. They were teaching persons, oh yeah, you gotta have blue eyes and straight hair, or curly hair, or blonde hair to be able to be these Greek deists or gods and goddesses, or on earth, or emperors, etc. Right? Why did they teach that? Why were they showing that? Why were they saying that for your family to get a job in the Senate and all that? Because they wanted persons to believe that only these families have all the power. But that's what they're talking. They wanted you to believe that these powers had all the power. Right? So you grew up seeing that and then seeing more of it and then it being displaced and then now it gets to be lighter and lighter hue. And now this family, these families, right? The family was in charge of Rome. They're married into the family in charge of England. In charge of England. They're married into the family that's in charge of France. And the family in charge of France is married to the family that's in charge of Portugal. And the family in charge of Portugal is married to the family that's in charge of Croatia. And the family in charge of Croatia, and so on and so forth. We don't want to have that part of the conversation. But that's a genuine part of the conversation. Is that yes, if we're going to discuss this, we have to be honest about racism, right, and how it still affects kingdom, right, and racism going deeper than just what's been happening since the 1600s or the 1500s. We got to go deeper. We don't want to have that deeper conversation, but we must if we're going to be honest. We gotta have honest conversation, and it's still affecting the conversation. And now we are not reverse racists per se, but now we're trying to go back and just be like, okay, to counteract the racism that was done to us. Now what we're gonna say is everybody who doesn't look like us, you guys are the bad guys. Not the way that Haiti did, the way they said, if you roll with us, you'll continue to beat us. No, now what we're seeing happen, right, on an exaggerated level is if you don't look like us, then you can't roll with us. And if you don't look like us and roll with us, well, we roll with the Most High. Nobody rolls with the Most High and he looks like us. That's when it gets dangerous, right? But we can't. But we're not going to do this thing where we're going to pretend that Yah didn't create everything in his standard, his glory. And if he did, if he chose Israel, part of the reason he chose him is for the wholeness of him. I'm not going to say because of his color, but he loves his color. I'm not going to say he chose him for his stature, but he loves his stature. I'm not going to say he chose him because of his father, but once again, he loves his father. That's covenant with his father. So forget what I would say or what I would put. I'm saying on either side, a lot of persons are trying their best to be like, I'm on one side or completely on the other, and y'all's not necessarily where y'all are standing on this. He's not saying that you can't come into the kingdom because you're white, but he's not going to say that color doesn't matter. If it didn't matter, he wouldn't have put it in his word. If color didn't matter, he wouldn't have said use color to identify. Right? When we went and we were picking apples or whatever, there were two different types of apples. Part of the reason I could tell which apples I wanted to go to is because of the color. It doesn't mean that they're not. I got both apples in the bag, but they produce something different. And by the way, if they produce something different, it's a way of also being able to tell the family lineage. That being said, this is why grafting is important, even if we're talking about physically. That means at some point you have to also realize, beloved, that there's going to be cats who are going to come in and they don't look like you and they're going to leave their families and they're going to be Israel and they're going to be separate and they're not going to want to be part of the world system, all right? Black or white, right? Because nation doesn't mean black or white or in between. Black, white, or in between. There's going to be persons who are going to leave their nations and want to be part of who we are. And if they're going to leave their nations and be grafted in, that means at some point you have to realize. Now they got to be honest. They got to be sincere. They got to do what the Most High says. But at the end of the day, right? At the end of the day, you still need to realize and recognize as they coming in that they're going to be part of the family. If you're coming in, you got to leave your nation behind. When it says people of all nations, it's not saying you stay all nations. That's why when you go through in Jerusalem, the New Jerusalem, you're going to have to go through a gate, and that gate's going to have one of the children of Israel's name on it. Has to. Those are the persons who were sealed. Right? This was a scroll being opened. First four seals popped off. First four horsemen. Fifth seal pops off. Hey, those who have been slaughtered and who are Israel and who are waiting on you to get vengeance. When is it going to happen? Sixth seal pops off. All of a sudden, the clients roll back like a scroll, and now a third of all this bitter stuff, these persons who are the bitterness of Yah, or the healing power of what Yah has put in the scroll, and we're supposed to eat the whole scroll later on in Revelation 10. All this stuff is put into the earth realm, and a third of the waters, a third of the people, a third of the nations automatically are gobbled up, because a third of them are doing nothing more than trying to suck the blood off of those who are righteous. It says this. This is word. So by the time you get to Revelation chapter 7, verse 1, that seventh seal, when it's revealed, once it's popped open, all of Israel gets sealed. The last seal being popped open begins the process of sealing 12 nations. Once those 12 nations are sealed, anybody grafted in can come in. That means you have to be attached to the 12 nations. It's a family. Right? You know what I'm saying? It's a family. You said we're all shades of color in God's creation. You delete any color from the painting, it will lose its beauty. Sure. If we delete any color, which means that color matters. That was my point. When you say, why are we focused on color? You're acting like I'm focused on color because I'm focused on salvation. I'm focused on color if it has to do with truth. That's my point. That's my point. And the only reason you were afraid, many of you are afraid to talk about color, is because you come from a place to where they told you that color meant that you couldn't get in. I'm telling you that I'm just simply going to a place where I recognize who I am and I'm okay with my color. That doesn't mean that I don't have any more work to do. See, before, the way they taught it was if you were a certain hue, that meant that you didn't have to work to get in. You lived by faith and not by works at all. And we had to work twice as much to get half as much, and maybe we could be at master's feet in heaven. But no, that's not. So when I come through with a different mindset on color, somebody's thinking about somebody else's mindset. That's not my mindset. That's not the mindset of Yah. You see that? So that's the reason why you have an issue with color, is because you dealt with Adolf. Right? Right? Adolf rocked with with the teachings of Rudyard Kipling, Jungle Book. Rudyard Kipling was cool with Charles Darwin. Charles Darwin's book, 1859, The Origin of Species by Means of Natural Selection, or The Survival of Favored Races in the Struggle for Life. That's what he was writing about when he talked about evolution, is that evolution requires that certain races should be able to live better than others, and that others will have to die off, and there's a struggle that will happen to make sure that the white man and the races or species he comes from is better. That's what evolution's about. This is why we got to get back into the word. See, when we're dealing with those, we have to deal in racism. We have to tell the truth about it. And guess what? Charles Darwin was a Christian preacher talking about what you now talk about is evolution. See, we have to, if we're going to be honest about why there's even a such thing as race that we have to talk about the way we talk about, is because this stuff was instituted, not by you and not by myself, but also too, there's generational curses that move. And there's a lot of my people that are dealing with generational curses because they look at their color and look at it as a bad place. And so why would I not use the word to tell them, not only is your color acceptable, but Yah was okay with making covenant with persons that not only were you, but look like you. And therefore you can actually be okay with identifying yourself in the word. But if you identify yourself in the word, pick up your cross too. If you identify yourself in the word, then take care of the stranger as well and allow them to be grafted in if they do what's necessary. If you believe in the word, make sure that you also use the word as it says, not to just use it to be able to keep power over other persons. If you believe in the word, denounce anything that comes out of chattel slavery. Right? That's the focus on color. When you say I'm focused on color, you're thinking I'm trying to do what you did, or what your ancestor did, or what you think that somebody else's ancestor did that you say I should be talking about, rather than focusing on, if I'm talking about color, I'm talking about it as a contextual fact that reveals truth. Yahashua being hidden in Kemet because he looks like a Kemetic person does not take away from a so-called white person being able to be grafted in. If that's your belief system, it's because that you either are thinking about things through a racist lens and therefore trying to call somebody a reverse of something that you still are using as a thought process, or you just don't comprehend at all what's going on. But I'm not talking common sense, and I'm not going to talk to you like you're a commoner. I'm speaking kingdom sense. I'm going to speak to you like you're royalty. And if you're not royalty or do not have the royal ear to hear yet, then let it develop. You see what I'm saying? But that's why a lot of persons have a problem with talking about color. You see, you have a problem with talking about color or lack thereof because one of the things that we have to admit and acknowledge is that persons who put racism into effect, right, they are the ones who have more reach. They are the ones who are the princes of the air or work for the prince of the air. They are the ones that can come to South Africa and tell you that they are more African than the Africans that they offed. They are the ones who can come and tell you they are American, even though they took the land from the American. And they don't qualify because by law, a copper colored person indigenous to the Americas has to be an American. But you can put on copper face, black face, and throw some tea over and go woo 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 and say you're the American, and everybody acts like that's some kind of lawful, legal thing that just happened as if you were adopted into the person that you offed. We don't want to talk about that as being part of a so-called Christian nation, the United States of America, who is supposed to be the one that everybody looks up to or needs to see or is bullied by, and therefore can't move until they move. If that's the head of the beast, right, or at least one of the close to the top horns of the beast, right, because the Satan is the head of the beast, right, the beast functions and moves, right, the people who came out, who follow the word out of the mouth of the beast in Revelation 12 are the ones in Revelation 13 who the beast comes out of. And the Antichrist spirit, the second beast, who has the thought process of 603 score 6, or 616, or 616 rather, excuse me, or Never Assad, if you know the number of the name, then these are persons that think like that. That's not how I think. Because that's not how the Most High thinks. You see? So when I speak on color, I'm not speaking about color from the perspective of, oh yeah, I hate you, blah blah. Now there are persons who say that they believe what I believe, just like there's persons who say that they believe what the so-called good white Christian believes and all that stuff too. Okay, but there's some persons out there that say good white Christians should be hanging Negroes from trees, and you say that's not a view, right? But there's also some persons that say that they're Hebrew Israelites like myself, and yet they're out here saying that they should do to you what you did to them, right? For doing to others as you've done it to yourself, and they'll take it out of context to make that work, correct? So if I denounce them and say that that's not righteous, that's not correct, guess what you should be willing to do? You should be willing to denounce it, not ignore it. That's part of the problem, is that you have ignored it so much that you have generations that are still dealing with generational curses, but don't even know where to start because persons want to pretend that General Lee was cool with getting rid of slavery, even though he said that the Most High, this is what he said, he believed his God created slavery. We want to talk about Georgia is not the place to bring up slavery and stuff, as if Georgia wasn't one of the biggest places to go for it, as if we didn't have to demolish that, or we, if you Buffalo Soldier, you know what I'm talking about, but not really, we not as far as I'm saying I'm part of the Union, but y'all get what I'm saying. That cats like us had to go down there and we had to destroy that stuff. We had to go through Texas, we had to go through Mississippi, we had to go through South Carolina. And I'm mentioning these places because all these places, Florida, etc., I'm mentioning Missouri, all these places, they said that they left the Union due to the fact where persons left them and went to the Confederacy, became traitors to your union, and they said so because they said that God had ordained it and that the founding fathers, that's what they believed. And if your father is father, not Father Abraham, but he's Father George Washington, then that makes sense because that's what they believed. That's what the Masonic tendency led them to. That's what they were able to do to get stuff moving and to go ahead and have a White House on plantation land that they got some of it from Maryland, some of it from D.C. That's the truth. They made a fake nation, a corporation that you still live in because the president is not a head of a country. The president is the head of a corporation. And we're still arguing over this corporative mindset. A corporation is a false person, is a fake person by legalese, by law, by definition. And we're arguing the principles of those who are not of you. So if we're going to be honest about it, we have to have an honest dialogue about, yes, fine, you're right. At the end of the day, color shouldn't matter. Problem is you were wrong to pretend that it doesn't. You see the difference? If you were somebody who's saying that you, and we're going to go a little bit over today, right? But I'm just telling you the truth. If you are somebody who's sitting there telling, saying, "Why color doesn't matter," I agree with you. It shouldn't matter, but I'm not going to lie to you and tell you that it doesn't. Now, I'm not sitting up here saying that it doesn't as far as, I'm saying it doesn't as far as one is better than the other. What I'm telling you is that we know that the system that you live in to this day, worldwide, has been influenced. And even if you want to take it outside of white versus black, you guys know that even before Eurocentric persons from England came in, right, and purchased places and took over places like India, like Israel and stuff like that. In India, they already had a caste system before they showed up. Persons came in and saw that the caste system was based off of color and everything, and they made it even worse. So we know that it's not even as simple as just white versus black. Like I was talking about the Greeks earlier, and a lot of you don't even know certain Greeks, even some of your favorite Greeks that hear about, like Alexander the Great, or even like Leonidas. You know that they were persons who were considered to be swarthy. If you don't think Alexander the Great was swarthy, his father was swarthy. So bare minimum, you got to say, according to what you guys use the terminology nowadays, he was mixed. So I'm not saying that somebody does evil or somebody's Greek or somebody's this, somebody's that. It means they're white. That's a concept you have. That's not our concept. That's not based off of proper precepts. He said, "How do you do apologetics against those who speak about the curse of Noah's son? What do you think is our best response?" As far as the curse, as far as Noah's son, um, Noah's son was never cursed. Yeah, it's not going to happen overnight. How you doing, Apple user 532753? Thanks for being part of the community. You said the word hue was used in your auto collision repair book, means color, cast, tint. Okay, sure. Hue man, by the way, doesn't necessarily mean hue is an Hue man either, right? If we're talking about that, hue man actually means humus man. But if you want to go by hue, then it means a man, or it's even man can mean spirit as well. So a spirit that has a color. That's not necessarily what it means. It actually means humus man, which means that in order to be dark, rich, nutrient, earth, to be human, you have to have dark, rich, nutrient, earth, and put a spirit inside of it. But that's according to scientific thought process from a certain culture. That's why I said that's not my culture. These are the words that you're using. They're not even culturally accurate or relevant. They're not how they're not how we look. Just like we talked about earlier, time is relevant, right? Time in the universe doesn't work the way that it works on Earth. You guys don't know that. But if you go further away from Earth, right, you have to keep changing how you take time. If you want to be on the same time as New York time, you have to actually do different stuff to keep the time. They have to shift how time works because time is relative. So time was made after creation. You guys are we're just figuring out time is what we use to see where we are in eternity. If you don't comprehend that, we don't comprehend time. Right? So same thing as far as man spirit and stuff like that. Man with a spirit inside. Or man even meaning spirit. But humus man, dark rich nutrient earth with a spirit inside. Talking about the first man, right? Adam, that makes sense. Extremely ready to the point to where he looks like he's what we would call like um, jet black, or the what's the word again? Shabaka, right? So we have to look at that. We look at it different. But once again, when somebody hears me talk about color, persons get that messed up. But anyways, going back to the question as far as what do I say if somebody talks about the curse of Noah's son, which basically even off that, this is why I have to say persons get this wrong as far as truth and about color. Noah's son. This is a very bad thought process, but this is what we've been taught for so long. We don't know that this was changed up during when chattel slavery was starting to pick up, not just only on Negroes but Africans, especially in the 1700s and 1800s. So if you're not aware of this, nobody used to believe at all that there was a curse of Ham, because Ham was never cursed. Hey, how you doing, Clarence? Long time no talk to. Feels like it, dude. How you been? How you been? Right? So I need you to catch this. Nobody, Bible, nowhere in there are you going to see where there's a curse of Ham. I'm not saying Ham never had anything happen to his family that could be looked at as curse. Hear what I'm saying? The curse of Ham doesn't exist as far as what you were taught. Somebody started teaching you that, but the curse was never on Ham. They shifted it. All they had to do was shift one generation. And once again, this is when we say read your Bible, it'll bless you. But when I say read your Bible, I always say this: read your Bible according to what it actually says. And a lot of you aren't even going to be able to get the context of what it actually says if you're not going to do what it says, and if you're not going to do it long enough, or read it long enough, or study it under those that can give you proper report. So a lot of you have heard, not read, or have read wrong because in your mind you have been told this so many times you don't read it correctly. You keep talking about the curse of Ham. That in of itself is due to racism. You see how I'm saying? All that stuff, right? So see, when we're talking about color shouldn't matter, this and that, whatever. That's why I made the point to say, even if we agree, yes, color should not matter, right? And I'm not talking. No, don't be sorry, Don. I'm not even talking to you. It's somebody else, right? And I'm not even mad at the person. I'm just letting them know why I went off on that a little bit, because they were saying something. I was trying to tell them why color, in fact, matters. We just don't look at it as far as matters as far as your salvation, but it matters as far as truth. And we're just saying the truth about something. If somebody says, Pastor Kofi, what color van you coming to pick me up in? And I say, well, I got a white van. Somebody said, right, if I show up in a blue one, I'm a liar. Right? And even though white is not a color, y'all know that part already. I'm just saying, using these things we talk about as colors. Then yeah, if I tell you I'm coming to scoop you up, I'm coming in the black BMW, and I show up in a green Pinto, somebody might be like, what? What? I thought you showed up in a black BMW. That's not saying that the black BMW is better because it's black. It's a way of describing something and showing you who it is. Like, if we want to get into melanin conversations and stuff like that, there's a conversation to be had about some of that, but even still, that's not about working out your own salvation, right? But hear this, beloved. Watch this. So, when somebody says the curse of Ham, I already know that you're off a little bit on your Bible, because it's never the curse of Ham. It was always the curse of Ham's son. I'm sorry, it's really the curse of Ham's son. Now, Ham's son gets cursed because of what Ham did. But it's not the curse of Ham. But see, somebody can change something, and now the discussion becomes really crazy. Because a lot of people, you don't know, during the 1800s, there were two big curses that they were using to say why it was all right to go into child slavery. They were saying, number one, that everybody had a Ham, which is true. Ham represents Africa as far as the beginning of it. Out of Ham comes Kemet. The order. Oldest is Cush, which is Ethiopia, South Sudan, Eritrea, places like that. Then maybe even a little bit of Tanganyika and stuff that you have there. Then you have also with Ham, you have Kemet, which is what you guys call Egypt today, which would have stretched a little further. And remember, Kemet went into what you guys call the Middle East, and even Cush did as well. Then he also had Puts, which is Libya, right? So we're dealing with some other pieces and stuff, and even getting the Carthaginians and stuff later that'll be mixed in with others. And then you're dealing with the fourth child, who is Canaan. Canaan is the place where Israel will be given the land officially, where Bethel is, where Padan Aram was, where Jacob had the dream, and where his children would be where heaven met earth, and built the not the cornerstone, but the pillar. Built the pillar, left, came back, built another pillar, and then built an altar there as well, right? And so all of these things are relevant for us, right? Now, why is all that important that I'm talking about all those different things? And why is it that important when we talk about this? Well, Canaan, the curse of Canaan was mainly this, that Canaan would have to serve Israel. Or really it was Canaan would have to serve Shem. What happens? What happened to start all this stuff, this chain of events? Noah has a drinking problem after the flood. He goes ahead and he gets drunk. His sons come in and see his nakedness. And before I finish that, I just want to put this out here, because I've disproven this before, but there are persons that still believe to see somebody's nakedness means to lay down with their wife. There are actually persons in the Bible who have laid down with somebody else's wife, and it is never referred to seeing somebody's nakedness. That is a misnomer. That is a lie. That is not the truth. Okay, so what happened is Shem and Japheth come in. They see their father naked. They go out. They get a blanket. They walk in backwards, and they cover him up. The reason they did this is because Ham was the first person to walk in, right? And saw him naked, and to see his nakedness is to see him in a certain position, but also right? In our culture, a son should never see his father's nakedness, so he also saw his father's testicles. That's really what's going on with the nakedness. So fathers are not supposed to be partaking around their children, especially their sons, right? That's not something that we do, but that's what happened. Ham goes in there. Really, that's not even the sin. The sin is he came out instead of saying, "Hey, we need to cover him up." He tried to put his shame out there. He tried to shame his father, not honor his father. His father wakes up. It says that he was as if he were asleep. So Ham did all this, right? Basically, Noah was drunk, but not blackout drunk. So he couldn't really respond, say, do too much, but he could see everything that was going on. Once he gets his faculties back about him, the first thing that he says is like, "Thank you to Shem, thank you to Japheth," and he says, "Hey, you Ham, since you decided, like, as my son, you would think that you would cover me up, this and that, but since you decided to go ahead and shame your father, he said, I speak over your son." That since you wouldn't make sure that his grandfather was taken care of, I will speak over your son that he must serve Shem. And later on, Shemitic persons through Alpha, through Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Israel, etc. Right? These Canaanites will then get to a place, and then later on will all come back after slavery with Moses leading us. Will all come back in to the land of Canaan, right? And they will serve us, and then ultimately many of them will be grafted, and some of them will leave, some of them will even become Esau, you know, be married into Edom, etc. But this is that was where that came from. So that's where the curse. And the curse was never even about color and all this, but what they did in the 17 and 1800s was certain colonial powers who sent these monks and other persons over and all these persons to try and do all this missionary work. They sent them on a mission with soldiers, and they would change up stuff, and then they would say, "Hey, we're going to start selling y'all." And when you started selling them, they stayed because there were a lot of so-called white persons that had a problem with selling anybody, especially selling somebody just because of the color of their skin. If we're supposed to be great Christians, and why are we out here selling persons because of the color of their skin? So what do? They start saying, "Well, time out." There were two things that they used, two different doctrines. If you didn't like one, you could use the other. They would say either one doctrine was Cain, when he was marked, was made black, even though the word marked means tav, which means that he had a so-called cross put on his forehead, right? And that's something that's done in sackcloth and ashes, mourning, but also protecting you for since you're around the dead. Remember, to be around the dead is to be unclean. So during those things, having death, having sackcloth and ashes and stuff, but at some point you're gonna have a mark and everything, but then you're gonna clean yourself and you're gonna get yourself together, right? And come out of a death state or a dead state, etc., etc. But this is something that's going on here, right? That we're not seeing is that actually in the 17, 1800s they were saying to be marked means to be black, right? And persons like Mormons and others would pick up on that. The second one that was used was, the curse of Ham, which is the curse of Africa, was that you guys would be made black. And once again, most persons don't read their Bible. They're not really educated on what it is. They don't really pick it up. And matter of fact, something will happen so much to you, you'll know something to be different or hear something different than what's actually on the page. So it's like, for example, a lot of you think that Moses went down the Nile River. When he never went down the Nile River, he was placed in a part of the Nile River around reeds so that he would be seen when the daughters of Kemet came out to bathe, because they had to face a certain way. So he was put in a basket in an ark, and he was put in a place where he could not be missed. He never was just thrown in the Nile River and his sisters just running down like they do in the movies and all these coloring books and all that, right? Oh, thank you, baby. 11:11. Yeah, and we're finishing up. We'll go a little bit long today, but we're pretty much finishing up. Remember, this is the last Q&A for the Barashayat series. After today, my family and I go take a little break, and I'll be back next week. We'll have still teaching and stuff up for Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So, still adhere to the schedule. We'll still have ministerial staff around. I just will be taking a break this week. Praise God. Also, 2 ministerial staff, don't forget we have a meeting tonight because we got to make up for Thursday, and I got to make up for yesterday as well. Right? But I'm just so that's why we talk about all this, and that's part of Barashayat. If you have a quick question or something, I'll try to maybe take 2 more if I can. I'll try to answer them as quickly as possible. If not, we might just have to hold off for a minute. But the reason why we went through this series is to put this stuff in order. So once again, yes, we can't deny stuff that's happened. Yes, by the way, to deny, look, I don't. Maybe we won't get into. I'm gonna try to see if I can get to other questions if I can. If you haven't put them out here, right? But I want to put it like this. How you doing, brother TJ? You said, is this teaching that Jerry Seinfeld type white folks that claim to be Jews truly cannot be only those of us with certain melanin can be? Trying to understand the point. Well, my point is the same as it's been, right? If you leave your nation, then you're no longer of that nation. That's why we've been talking about nationality. The will, the lineage, the birthright, the blessing, and the charge. Nationality, nation building, right? If Jerry Seinfeld came into the truth and denounced anything about the nation he is, not just Israel or modern Israel or Jewish or whatever you want to call it, that Ashkenazi, if he denounced the world, if he denounced the United States of America and said, hey, if I'm going to be true Israel, I'm leaving those things behind. If I'm going to be true Israel, I'm going to help build the kingdom. If I'm going to be true Israel, I'm going to give, so it shall be given unto me. Right? Like if he decided to leave those things behind and he becomes, even as a stranger to this, if he comes into the truth, then he's no longer that. You see, that's the difference. That's what I'm saying. We're having a conversation that's not. I promise I'm not going to go any more than 10, 15 more minutes. I promise. Right? I can't include. Maybe music included, but I promise I'm not going any more than 10, 15 more minutes. We got to, even though I'm going longer because it's the last of the series, I'm not going to, go for so long. Right? But hear what I'm saying. Even with all that, you see what I'm saying? When you saying this and that, you're trying to go to a place that's not my comprehension of color or nationality because it's not Yah's comprehension of color or nationality, right? You're looking at when I say color matters, and you're still trying to do this thing of, okay, so because color matters, that means that he can't get in because he's white. I didn't say color matters and that's why I have salvation. I said color matters when it comes to the truth, right? But here's similar thing I said earlier. If somebody were to meet me and they said they're gonna meet me on a blue bike, and they show up in a red Hyundai, I'm not gonna be looking for the red Hyundai. I'm looking for the blue bike. And even if I see them in the red Hyundai, I'm probably gonna be a little thrown off at first because I'm like, you told me you were coming in something that looked different. So if Yah wants us to look for Israel, and he gives us specific indicators as far as what the tree looks like that everybody must be grafted into, and we keep telling persons that doesn't matter what Yah says look for, then there's something weird about that. Now it doesn't say Yah says look for Israel and nobody else will ever be able to come in, right? It says look for Israel as the tree. The tree. Revelation, Romans 11. It says the same thing. It hasn't changed up. This is Paul, the same Paul you guys want to use and dismiss how much he talks about law being spiritual, law being holy, law being without sin, commandments being holy, right? If there was no law about not coveting, he wouldn't know that he wasn't supposed to lust, right? The same way we deny all these things that he says clearly that if you don't even believe that Israel matters, he says not only should you forbid that mindset, but if you won't forbid it, then you shouldn't listen to me because he says you can't use anything I'm saying if you don't think Israel matters because I'm a Benjamite. He says the only reason why I'm even in position is not because, now he made a point to say, it's not only because of my color, but he doesn't shy away from, hey, I know the law. The problem was that I didn't know the lawgiver. But now that I know the lawgiver and I know the law, when you put them together, yeah, the law was always holy. Paul does not shy away from this. We have a problem. We have a problem. Am I in Israel? No, not at the moment. It has nothing to do with me being Israel. Once again, you're going off of legalese. The only reason why somebody in here today, if you are English, I bet you the only reason why you say you're English is because you were born in England. But being born in England doesn't make you English. If you are somebody who calls yourself an American, I bet you the only reason why you call yourself an American is because you were born in America. But being born in America is not what makes you American. You don't know how birth certificates work. You don't know how law. It doesn't matter where you're born. It matters who you're born from. That's why if you were to fill out a DS-11 form, right, for your passport, and you were to get an updated passport or a new passport, what you would discover, right? You might not be aware of this. But what you would discover is if you go on there, you got to learn how to do this properly. right? So I'm not just saying go do this if you don't know how, if you haven't been taught how. But if you were to fill out the form correctly, you can fill out the form in a manner in which it says you are not a U.S. citizen, but a non-citizen national. A non-citizen national is not a citizen of the United States. Once again, the United States is not a country by law. USC, United States Code 28 USC 300215 subsection A tells you what? That the United States is a corporation, right? Subsection B tells you that it's a trust, it's also a board. That's why on the top of your board, right, even though he's not the one that really runs the board or has the most shares, but at the top of your board is who? Is the president. Who comes next? The vice president. And you have secretaries, you have treasurers, you have cabinet members, you have senate members. They're all part of a board. And in subsection C, it is a publicly traded entity. It's a fake corporation, right? You see what I'm saying? So we're having conversations, but you're not having the same conversation. I'm talking about country and kingdom and nation. You're talking about color, right? You're talking about color and me saying that color makes a nation. I'm talking about nation and how you can use color as part of something to tell you what has happened to the nation. You're having a different conversation, right? No, when I'm talking about denouncing, yeah, as far as there is no dual citizenship. You're in the kingdom or you're not. Your main your main country, the only countryman you should have is what? Is Israel. Or, if you don't like that, the kingdom of heaven. And the only reason we say Israel is because Israel is supposed to be, according to Genesis 28, the place where heaven meets earth. Just like when a new heaven meets a new earth, it's supposed to be in Revelation 21, 22. Or just like when heaven met earth, when Adam and Eve were in the Garden of Eden. The Garden of Eden was a guarded spot, a delightful spot, a place where the door was open. All this stuff is in the name Eden or Adon. It's a nation. It's a place where heaven meets earth. This is why, hey, he talks to the Samaritan woman. Hey, what way should we focus? Should we focus east? Should we make sure that we're facing east when we pray? And he says, or should we face the way that we face? He says, look, he's honest with him, right? The Messiah, he's honest. This is one thing, once again, when I'm talking about telling the truth, I'm talking about just being honest. Let's have honest dialogue, honest discussion, honesty. He's being honest. He doesn't say it doesn't matter. He says to her, hey, sis, look, I need you to comprehend that we know what we speak of. We have the law. We had the prophets. We had all these things. You did not. So he says, we know what we speak of. He says, however, there is coming a day where we're going to have to look to the left or the right, this way, that way, etc., because the kingdom of heaven should meet with the earth. That's in you. It should meet in you. The kingdom of heaven should be in you. Now, that makes you an ambassador. Wherever your feet tread, that's where you go. You see? None of that has to do specifically with being so-called black or so-called white. However, what is the importance of what's left over? The importance of what's left over, if we are honest about it, is that there are persons today that when we say, hey, the Bible tells us in Revelation 2:9 and Revelation 3:9 that there will be persons that say they are us and are not, but are actually the synagogue of the Satan. We know that there are persons who say that they are Israel and are not. We know that we're not supposed to be about Balaam doctrine, where persons preach sermons to say Israel doesn't matter, even though Israel, of course, matters. This is stuff that's in your Bible. So when I say this, you're having an issue with it because you think I'm saying black people are better than white people. No, what I'm telling you is that certain so-called black persons are Negroes or Israelites. And these persons that are Israelites have been kept away from who they are for a long time. And now that we have actual, not just biblical reference points, but historical reference points, scientific reference points, right? DNA reference points to be able to tell you who we are instead of persons who want us to be, according to Psalm 123, at ease with our scorning and filled with contempt for ourselves. That's what this system is based off of, is us being filled with contempt for ourselves. We are breaking down the system by loving ourselves, and somebody says, oh, that means you hate white people. Where do you know what I'm saying? Be careful when persons speak like that. Where do they get off? Forgive me, I'm trying to finish up, but I'm just being honest with you. I'm not going to sin, but there's a little bit of righteous indignation, if I'll be honest with you. Where does somebody get off telling me that if I simply just say, hey, look, I'm teaching you that you are not some vagabond, that you're not some slave, that you're not somebody who has no story past grandmama in them, that you're somebody who's worthy of being modest, that you're somebody who's worthy of being loved, that you're somebody who's worthy of being respected, that you're worthy of somebody who, look, is willing to be able, who's worthy of opening up the scrolls and looking at what they say. And if it says that you have similarity, bare minimum, with these persons, and you were told that you had no similarities, and watch this, now I'm not saying even the person who's saying this is a so-called white person, but I'm just telling you straight up. so-called white, so-called black, so-called token, so-called coon, so-called whatever you want to call it. I'm about to hip you to something. If somebody is simply reading the Bible and saying this gives me confidence, and your whole thing is to say that their confidence has to come from them hating you, that means that you've been taught by the same persons that the ones that hate ourselves. You've been taught to hate yourself so much that if you can't have this thing that still says, hey, color doesn't matter, that you feel like you've been written out of the Bible. You got to deal with some self-hate. I don't want you to be guilty. I don't want white man's guilt, white women's guilt. I could care less about white guilt. If anybody's guilty of anything, let them repent so they won't be guilty. That's not my argument. That's not my sermonette, thought process, etc. I don't care about you feeling guilty. I don't want you to feel guilty. I don't want a bunch of white persons to join SOC and then all of them are sitting there, yeah, I'm just happy to be here and thank y'all for letting me be around and I shouldn't feel free. If you don't feel free, don't come here. Right? But once again, for me to speak as I speak, I must tell you the truth again. The Bible, Barashayat, the beginning, first scroll that we've been focused on since February 7th, that we're ending on today, it has never been written for everybody. It's been written for those that will do what it says. And it's not written to get across to everybody. It's written to get across to those who have an ear. If you hear me mention black or white and your whole thing is up, he's just as bad as those who said that black people can't get in because of the color of the skin. When he mentions that Christ can look like a so-called black person and therefore be known as a so-called Negro, which really means he's an Israelite, and he shows you where you can read and get this stuff from, and you read it for yourself, or even won't read it, you just hear it and say, I don't like it because you don't like white people. You're not even catching the tenor of conversation. You're not even close to the proper frequency. You don't have ears, as it would say, you don't have ears to hear. Right? So once again, my responsibility, my goal, my mindset, my thought process is not to try and get everybody to agree with this. This is just tell you the truth. I'm not here to cause anybody to feel guilty. If you feel guilty, then maybe there's something we need to deal with. But I'm not here to tell you because you're white, you shouldn't come in here unless you're kissing our feet. No, that's what they had us doing, and that's what persons are telling you, that if you come in, you're gonna have to kiss butt. No, I don't want nobody touching or kissing no part of me, right? Outside of, Elder Alma and I, we can hug up on each other enough. I don't need nobody else's touches like that. I don't need nobody to make me feel whatever. I don't need nobody to tell me that. No, I'm cool. I'm married. I'm straight on that. I'm not telling you this because I need you to bow down to me. I'm telling you, God needs you to bow down. Right? And if you're going to deny what His Word says, or not even get into a place where you can hear His Word, like we were speaking about earlier Rise Bible Study session, then maybe it's because your heart can't handle the seed that's been thrown. Maybe it came into your heart, but before it could go there, it was snatched up by demonic stuff around you. Maybe you was trying to get into his heart, but your heart was still too hard. You still haven't forgiven. You still got too much going on. There's too much stony ground. Maybe it got into your heart and it rooted down a little bit too much, but then certain things in life happened and you went right back to white versus black and all this stuff. But it's not because of the seed. Because if I give you the seed, when your heart is ready, when your passion is right, when you actually have comprehension of culture correctly, and then can actually talk about the soul or the psychology or the spirit or the emotion, etc., you guys would then be able to have conversation. But I'm telling you right now, just like in this series, somebody says, "Oh, you guys don't even believe in science." I'm like, hold up. If you look at it, we go gas, liquid, solid, separation. Here's where the seed comes in. The earth has to come out from underneath the ground. Volcanoes erupt. You have to have sun, moon, and stars. You can have time, sun, moon, and stars. Now you can have the seed grow, all this stuff. You have water that's shooting up from the ground. You have the fowl in the air, the fish in the sea. And when you do some more research, you see the dinosaurs that are there. Then you have cattle. You have things that creep upon the ground. And then man comes, and then it is complete. And then Yah rests from his work and makes Adam, puts Adam in charge. Like, this is a very different concept than most of you have. Matter of fact, we don't know how much time it took to build the earth, as we talked about in the series. Because how could we know how much time it took to build the earth? And real talk, how do we know how much time it took to build the earth if there was no time until the fourth period was finished? There were 4 periods in eternity, and you're looking for some kind of timeline. How long did it take? There's no time, right? You're having a different conversation than we are, right? You're having a different conversation than we are, and I'm not mad about it. I'm just trying to tell you, it's going to be difficult. Right. Last thing. I told you we got to be finished. We're going long because this is the last Q and A, and this is really the last session in this Barashayat series. So thank you all who've been part of this. Thank you for those who go back through this. Thank you for those who have literally just watched every recording. If you watched these later on and now you got to today, this has been a labor of love. This might be the most extensive and longest series I've done. 6 months, 4 days, right? I don't think I've ever done anything longer than that, or as long as this, and as specific as this. Not going away even the Q and A from this for this many months, but I'm gonna say this, right, and then we're gonna get ready to take our leave finally for the last time, right? As far as the importance of this, right? This is culture. I want you to see something in the Sermon on the Mount. This is a sweet spot for us. Matthew chapter 5, 6, and 7, Luke chapter 6, etc. Sermon on the Mount. I want you to catch all the stuff that's said, and then at the end of this, I want you to see what Yehoshua says about those who are wise and those who are foolish, right? Because at the end of the day, I can give you exactly what the Messiah says. We can give you the references. We can give you the scrolls. We can tell you what to cross-reference. We can give you the videos. We can give you the books. We can do the VBSs. We can give you language. We can give you culture. We can give you characters. You have to do the work, right? But this is the last thing I'm gonna say. We're gonna close this dynamic series. All right. I'll try to stay only in Matthew 5, 6, and 7. I'm finished after this, right? It's about 11:30. I said we can go a little long, but if I go any longer than what I'm about to go, we're gonna be pressing, and I'm going into some territory I don't mean to. We got to make sure that I'm taking care of some business. All right. So Matthew chapter 5, 6, and 7 is Matthew's account. He's a tax collector, so he pays attention to certain information, especially lawfully. He's a tax collector, former tax collector at this point, but a tax collector nonetheless. And he's writing what he recalls from the Sermon on the Mount. In Matthew chapter 5, right? So Matthew chapter 4, the Messiah has just finished being baptized, then is sent into the wilderness by Holy Spirit to be tempted of the Satan. He finishes that experience. He comes down. He starts preaching and teaching to persons of Galilee, to Israelites, to Gentiles, to Africans, to Greeks, to Romans, to anybody who's there, right? If many of us are starting to listen to him, he's starting to become a lot more infamous and famous. And so he's already been preaching, but what we affectionately have been taught is his first sermon. This is not his first sermon, and it's not even the first time he's spoken on the word. That being said, though, he goes out and he does this what we call the Sermon on the Mount. Matthew chapter 5, verses 3 through 12, he starts off with something called the Beatitudes. These are the attitudes that you should be, right? This is how you should conduct yourself as you carry yourself. But he's actually flipping the pancake. He's shifting the paradigm on what we believe and how we think. So this is what happens in Matthew chapter 5, verses 3 through 12. In Matthew chapter 5, this is what goes down. Matthew chapter 5, verse 3 through 12. He starts off by saying, look, blessed, what is that? Blessed, or who? The poor in spirit, for the kingdom of heaven belongs to them. Because they were taught, you don't know as much. But you can still learn, you can still grow, and the kingdom belongs to you. He says, blessed are those that mourn, for they shall be comforted. So yeah, it's okay to go through, it's okay to put your tears out there. It's okay, black man and black woman, so speak, both of us that like to not admit that we're going through. It's okay to go through it for persons to mourn with you. You shall be comforted in the kingdom, in this country. He's reshaping the country and bringing us back to what the law actually is there for, right? He says, blessed are those that humble themselves, right? Right? He says, blessed are those who are merciful, for they shall obtain mercy, right? Is it blessed are those who are humble themselves, for they shall be called the children of Yah? Am I in the wrong place? But he says all these different things to be. Then he ends in that little section by saying, and blessed are those who, he says, blessed are you when you keep up with the prophets did, and when they rebuke you, revile you, and say, oh man, they're evil against you. In other words, they speak on you and lie on you, because they're really lying on me. And when they do so, he said, rejoice and be exceeding glad, for they did the same thing to the prophets that came before us. Right after that, we get into Matthew chapter 5, verses 13 through 16. Verses 13 through 16, he says, we are the light of the world. We are the salt of the earth. We are a city that's set on a hill. He said, we are the example. He says, don't cover your example up. Don't cover up your light. Don't snuff it out. Don't stop allowing the oxygen right? The things that are feeding it from heaven to keep it from the fire going, the spirit going. He says, don't allow that to get covered up, because that's what they want you to do, is to cover up who you are. It's a cover up situation, but we're not here to cover up. We're not here to be in the cover up situation. We're here to do what we're called to do. So he says, don't be like that. Matthew chapter 5, verse 17 through 20, we went through already today. Basically, long story short, he says, until heaven and earth pass away, we should not change the way that the word is written. He says we do this because Yehoshua did not come to destroy the law. He came that the law would be fulfilled and put into effect, and what the prophet said would be put into effect. He says that anyone who's teaching different than that and living different than that is the least in the kingdom, but those that live by it and teach it are the greatest in the kingdom. And then he even ends by saying in verse 20 that we should know the law greater than the scribes and the Pharisees. A lot of you don't know the law greater than these persons who are in charge, and they're eating you up. Verses 21 through 26, he even says, if we don't get this law together, especially within ourselves, it's going to cause a lot of us to end up in prisons. He even says after that, verses 27 through 32, you better get your marriages and stuff together, because our community is based off of anti-fornication and anti-adultery. What does that mean? We should be on the opposite side of adultery, which obviously is cheating, right? But then also, too, we should be on the opposite side of fornication, which is any false imagery of marriage. He then keeps on going and says we should let our yea be yea, or we should let yea be yea, nay, nay. In other words, if you say something, right, word is bond. We shouldn't even have to worry about it. He keeps on going through all these things and then gets us to what? To the Lord's Prayer. And teaches us how to pray, and teaches us the responsibility of prayer as well as giving to others, and shows us to make sure that we comprehend that the prayer is talking about kingdom and righteousness and lawful places that we should be in the spirit, in the flesh, in our souls even. Then we get to a place to where now we start looking at, hey, give and it shall be given unto thee. Elohim's measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over. We get to a point, and this is after we learn, seek ye first the kingdom, right? Not all this other stuff. Seek ye first the kingdom, and all the things that shall be added unto thee. All these things you're worried about, because birds have nests, foxes have holes. All these places are taken care of. Well, if those things are taken care of, if the grass is taken care of, if the lily in the field, it looks better than anything Solomon could have ever worn. Right? King Solomon could have ever worn. And guess what? We should realize that we are taken care of. We're covered. We're fed. Why are we worried about inconsistencies and things when we have the most consistent, perfect being who is watching over us and who we're connected to? You see? So he's saying all these different things to us. And he's telling us all these different things. He says, hey, stop worrying about somebody's little imperfection or this and that or whatever. Get that out of your eye. He's going through all this stuff. He talks about stop casting pearls before swine. He makes it a point to tell us the actual golden rule. Many of you only know half of it, but the entire golden rule is this. Do unto others as you want done unto you, for this is the law and the prophets. Once again, reestablishing law and prophecy and scrolls and not forgetting them, so that you can actually know how to treat each other. He goes through all these things, but here's the last thing that we leave for this series, because really I can't say anything else that we haven't said in 6 months, 4 days, and counting. Right? I can't really say anything else outside of this, so I'll just end with this. You ready? Last thing. He says, those who have heard these wise sayings, those who heard the sermon, those who heard this series, those who have heard the word, and lived by them, he says, you shall be like a man who built his house. Right? The foundation of his house was built. His house was built upon what? The rock. Rock. Solid. Right? Live on something that's a solid foundation. Those who have learned how we talk about how money's not real, and make sure that you're putting stuff aside, how you're a nation, how you're not even living in free will, because how can you, like, look at this, beloved. How do you live in free will and you're still part, like, hear this, get this, catch this. How do I live in free will and I'm still part of a wicked system? You can't get off your 9-to-5 job. How you have free will? See, this is why y'all's working us towards this stuff. We're not thinking righteously. We're not thinking support each other's businesses, and that way we can be free together as a community. If I uplift them, I uplift their freedom. If they sow back into me, they sow back into mine. Right? So, those who have heard these wise sayings we've been talking about for months, those who live by these shall be wise, as if you built your foundation upon rock. But those who do not listen shall be considered to be foolish. This is what the Messiah says. He considers you to be foolish. And he said that if you don't listen and you don't adhere to it, you want to keep going through the same stuff that's waxing you, he says, well, then I will liken you to a fool who built his house upon the sand. Now, it didn't say he built his house upon the sea. I'm be very careful with you. Right? It doesn't say he built his house upon the sea. It said he built his house upon the what? Upon the sand. What is sand? Sand is a compound word. It means sea and land. Right? It's put together. He said, I liken you. How you doing, Tony? He said, if that should be a part of the community. He said, I would liken you to somebody built your house upon the sand. Meaning that, hey, yeah, you can get stuff started on the sand, but when the tide comes in, or if a storm comes in, even if you got your house on the beach and on the sand, maybe you can make it work for a little bit, but oh, when the storm happens, or when that water comes in, when the tide comes in, with certain animals that normally can't get to you, can all of a sudden get to you. With certain animals that don't come out until the water comes out. Now all of a sudden they're coming out in them little holes in the sand that you don't even pay attention to all day. Right? He said, I'll liken you to the fool who built his house to where you're not stable, to where you can be stable when things are great, but when the storms come. See, this is why we're learning about this. This is why we're learning culture. This is why we're trying to build a house on the rock. On the house stays still even when the storm comes. When the house stays still even with the earthquake. But when it's on the sand, all it takes is a little bit of water. All it takes is the wrong storm. All it takes is something that, yeah, it's a lot for us, but it shouldn't be a lot for what we're housed in. And remember, the law doesn't give rights. The law does what? The law protects rights. So yes, those who are dealing in all these different things or whatever, Yahashua tells us that we need to stop building our house in the sand and let this water just come in and out, and messing us up. We need to build our house upon the rock, right? Take me to the rock that's higher than I. We need to build this upon the rock. Those who listen, they shall be likened to the rock. Amen. Amen. All right. So that's all that I have for today. Looks like they actually about to start doing some stuff that might be kind of noisy anyways around here. So I'm going to go ahead and end here. Thank you guys so much. Thank you for being on this journey with us. We appreciate you. I'm going to let you guys on TikTok just look at the water. If you want to do a shout out, you can do that. You can feel free. But I thank you all. I appreciate you. Pray for us. We'll be, after tonight, I'll be off for about a week, even though I'll still do some SOC University here or there. And I'll probably be on prayer and supporting, some of the other ministers and stuff like that. But as far as being on, I'm gonna be off. All right. So I'll be around. I still got stuff. We're still sending stuff to the children. I still got videos I gotta send. And some of you that didn't get your stuff, that I find out you didn't get your stuff because I didn't get any call back or anything. I'm gonna make sure that you guys see that. But we're still working the stuff out. I'm gonna send some pictures to you guys just so you can see what's being made. And then from there, we're gonna have to, we got the stuff together. We got donations together. We can send everything out. Thank you guys who've been sending stuff for Feast of Tabernacles as well. I appreciate you. I've been seeing it come in. Thank you for those who gave extra gifts and stuff. Some of you blessed my family and I this weekend. And well, you always bless us, but you know who you are. You guys really, really helped us immensely. So I appreciate you and I thank you. All right. So Tadah, Masha Pahe, thank you for being on. Hopefully this series has been a blessing to you. This has been a blessing to myself and my family. And I'm going to go ahead and take my leave for today. I will see you guys prayerfully this evening, about 8 p.m. New York time. Ministerial staff, we didn't have a couple meetings this last 4 days we were supposed to have, so this is what I'd like to do. I'm going to send it to you in text, but I'm going to just tell you outright again. I would like to have our meeting that was supposed to be on Thursday for tonight, and I would like to also incorporate the prayer service that I couldn't make happen yesterday. I'd like to have that happen tonight as well. So what I would like to do is see if we can meet up at 6:30 p.m. New York time tonight, which most of you said meeting up tonight should be okay. So I'd like for us to meet up tonight and have a prayer service to start, and then finish up with assignments for who's going to be preaching and teaching Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I'll be back on Monday, but just make sure we have all those taken care of, and then of course do a brief teaching. Also, two brothers. I'm gonna talk to our 3 men who are ministerial staff. If you guys recall, we asked you guys to be ready for a little assignment. Maybe do a 20-minute word apiece this Saturday for the men's meeting, because I won't be available this weekend. So if you guys can be ready for that, I would love to have you guys ready to help out in that. I'll send you guys a reminder about that. Pray for you guys to be ready to go. But love y'all. Thank you all so much. I appreciate you. Continue to keep us in prayer. Continue to keep me in prayer. My health, I've been doing better, but still, keeping my health in prayer, keeping me in the right direction. Really, if I just be honest, just cover my family, cover us. We cover y'all, cover us. I know you do. I can feel it, when people are praying for us. There's a lot that's always going on. There's a lot of things that are even happening. There's a lot of stuff we're always dealing with behind the scenes and trying to figure out the best way to make something work. We praise y'all that you guys are staying in there, hanging in there. But love y'all, okay? Love y'all. I'll try to put some word out in different text trains. By the way, don't forget you got your text trains for your groups, right? So please, man, please, sir, don't forget putting stuff out there. If you're in the Carolinas group, if you're in the Northeast group, if you're in the Texas group, whatever, use these text trainings. Like, let's make sure that everybody knows we're still out here, we're still listening, we're still preaching, we're still teaching, we're still looking for stuff. I'm gonna try and have it to where Ministerial staff's gonna start doing Bible studies with us, and we're gonna actually have a couple of days a week, maybe, or whatever day you all decide, or maybe every once in a while, once a month, once every other week, whatever you guys decide, where y'all can come together in your regions and have Zoom meetings and have Bible studies and stuff. And then on top of that, maybe that turned into a couple of them. We say, hey, we're just gonna meet up, and y'all can meet up in person. Babies can meet up together, all this stuff. We got so many babies in all these different places, so many adults, so many families. So many things that we can do, so many places I'm finding that we have access to. Let's start utilizing this stuff. For us, it's not just virtual; it is reality. But anyways, love y'all. Hopefully, you got something out of this series. This was the most extensive one I've ever done personally. I appreciate it. Shout out, to the teachings of Pastor Gas, who has passed away for a few years now, but was a pastor of mine. And this is the type of series that he did on a normal basis on every Wednesday. So hopefully, he's passed away, but hopefully, I make those who know about Pastor Gas, we make him proud with all the stuff we were able to do. And prayerfully, SOC, you guys got a lot out of everything. We will be having our next graft-in sessions coming up. For those who didn't get a chance to come to the first ones, who didn't get a chance to go to all of them, we'll have those coming up this week, the following week. And especially for those coming to Feast of Tabernacles, October 6th to the 13th, we're going to start having weekly meetings, to make sure that we're discussing what's going to happen. I'm going to take charge of it and just kind of grab it by the reins. Also, two brothers, we're going to have conversation too on where we're going to do, what we're going to do and where we're going to meet for men's meeting and everything. So we're gonna try to figure that out soon too, and get together and have a place where we can meet up. More than likely, it'll be on the East Coast somewhere. So just if brothers, if you're able to make it, if you'd like to make it, of course it'll be open on Zoom. And sisters, you're invited to come. Especially brothers, you want to bring your families. Just know we're gonna be focused on the men. Okay, it's gonna be much male, very male centric. But if you happen to come by and you want to support and you want to be there for the brothers or whatever, you want to come bring your husbands, or you want to be there with your husbands, whatever the case might be, feel free. Or you want to come do a family trip, whatever the case might be, feel free. Maybe we can do something for families just for fun and stuff like that. But the main reason we're coming is for the men to come together. All right, women's meeting is coming up too, of course, with the the Women in Red is going to be happening as well too. But I'm just saying, brothers specifically, when I get back, we definitely going to have to have some conversation to make sure that we're on the same page and we're ready to meet up. Alrighty. So love y'all to life. That's all that I have. You all take care. Thank you again. I'm at this point delaying everything is getting closer and closer to noon. So thank you all. I appreciate you. If you're on TikTok, feel free to do the shout out. I'm just gonna go ahead and let you guys look out over the water and hopefully you enjoy what you see. Other than that, once again, thank you for that. As always, we give our honor and praise to the Most High. We give our praise and honor then for my wife, the Honorable Alma. Thank you for any donations, time, talent, effort, energy, resources that you give, including even, yes, those of you who do give money and things like that behind the scene to help us financially. We appreciate you. But thank you all. Love y'all. Take care. And as always, this has been Pastor Kofi, Pastor Servant to Christ, where we are always changing lives one mind at a time, but being the voice of the voiceless and speaking the unspoken. And until I have the great privilege, opportunity, and responsibility of being in front of you all again, please remember as always, that you are loved, you are necessary, you are majestic, you are fearfully and wonderfully made, and you, which is all of us working together, will be the reason why people who are in this system no longer have to be of it. Shalom, peace, Yam Bet Shalom, or Yam Ibon Shalom, depending on what calendar you're using. And I shall talk to you very soon. So thank you again. Appreciate you. And you guys have a great day. And thank you for being part of the series.